Cool Figure TV. Revolutionary salute. Revolutionary salute. Like, share, subscribe. Welcome to the House of Revolution. You know I'm your humble host, the Mean Revolution. And Trump talked big yesterday. He talked real tough. He warned of death and destruction like you've never seen before. If the Houthi rebels did not stop attacking ships, well, they didn't, and they attacked the U.S. aircraft carrier. Before we get into that, be sure to wipe your feet. That means hit the like button, like, share, subscribe, support the platform, y'all. Peace and blessings, family. I told Trump, big mistake. Don't threaten the Houthi rebels. They want you to declare war on them so they can really face you.
Tensions are rising very rapidly in the Red Sea between Yemen and the United States after the latter's attack yesterday on Yemen that killed over 30 people and wounded over 100 people, innocent civilians in these attacks. But before we clarify what's happening now and the response that came from Yemen and the response that came from Iran as well, we need to understand why this is happening. The Israelis, they decided to block all aid going into the Gaza Strip after phase 1 of the deal of the ceasefire ended. According to that same agreement, Israel should continue allowing all aid into the Gaza Strip. Of course, they already had so many shortages and did not allow much of the aid that they agreed to get into Gaza to go into Gaza, especially in relation to the temporary housing, heavy equipment, and also medical equipment to help support the healthcare system in Gaza that's going through a crisis. Now, Israel decided, of course, to have this blockade. They did not allow anything in, and they also stopped any normal aid, any like food, any water. They cut off the electricity of the population of Gaza, again, going against everything in the ceasefire agreement that they agreed to. They agreed to with the mediators, with the United States, with Qatar, and with Egypt, and with the Palestinian side as well. After that, Yemen, they warned Israel, Ansarullah or Houthis, they warned Israel. They said, if you continue down this path of not allowing aid into the Gaza Strip, we'll resume our operations. And they initially said, we will resume our operations in the Red Sea, meaning that they will be imposing a blockade against Israel in the Red Sea and in the areas surrounding it too. The Gulf of Aden and the Arabian Sea as well. So Ansarullah are taking a responsive measure against a genocidal entity like they have before, after no other state really did what Yemen did at the time, which is imposing a fully legitimate blockade on a country committing genocide, a country that is confirmed to be committing genocide by the ICJ, with wanted criminals leading the country, wanted for the ICC, war criminals. So instead of course, the United States, the main supporter of Israel, telling them, hold on a second, take a step back, things are escalating, and we don't really want to get into fight here in the Red Sea again after, well, they stopped after a year, Yemen, after the ceasefire began and aid started to get into Gaza. But of course, their conditions before were, we will stop once the genocide stops and the siege is lifted. Now, of course, one of the main things has been breached severely, the siege. Israel still has breaches and they still kill civilians, not to the same extent that they had before. That doesn't, of course, make it in any way better, of course, but they are not having the same attacks that they conducted inside of Gaza before the ceasefire took place. The United States, no word against Israel, no criticism of the Israeli actions, despite them breaching international law constantly. Yemen made the decision, they started to have these attacks, this embargo, to be more specific, on Israel and any Israeli-linked ship unlike what some would like to say, that they are preventing and banning all ships from going through the Red Sea. That is absolutely false. And the Yemenis many times repeated that they're only targeting Israel and Israeli-linked ships. The United States, under the Trump administration, they wanted to flex muscles quickly, and Donald Trump himself came up with a statement saying that we're going to rain down hell. He likes using the sentence, they will pay with hell. And they had this attack. Again, civilians were killed inside of Yemen, which is a very big escalation, a very serious escalation, especially after the fact that they stopped. And well, it only took the United States, it could have taken the United States just to tell Israel, stop, allow the aid in, and go actually into phase 2 like you agreed. No, from their perspective, Israel can breach, they can do whatever they want, and will still defend them and attack Yemen on their behalf. That happened. And yesterday we spoke about the prospect of Yemen directly attacking the USS Harry S. Truman, the aircraft carrier. I thought that they would choose that as the first target, and they did today. They confirmed that they had.
So now Trump done locked himself into war. You kill innocent women and kids. He gonna hook himself up to be like Joe Biden, and Trump will be a war criminal if he don't turn from his wicked ways right now. He gonna get a lot of U.S. soldiers killed if he don't stop this foolishness. But he bombed Yemen yesterday. He killed a lot of innocent people. 30 people was killed. They said like 20 of them were civilians. You might kill about 10 soldiers, they say. Maybe, maybe not. But you warned them. No more blocking the Red Sea. All hell will break loose, Yemen, if you dare shoot at any more cargo ships. Yemen say, cargo ships? We're going to shoot at your aircraft carriers now. They shot at the aircraft carriers. Now, Trump, what are you going to do? And I said this. You can't just keep flying and dropping bombs, missiles. That ain't tough. That ain't gangster. If you really want to be tough, Trump, declare war on Yemen. That's what they want you to do.
And 18 missiles, cruise missiles, and drones targeting the USS Harry S. Truman and the ships or destroyers accompanying it. There was also a statement coming from Abdul Malik al-Houthi, who is the lead.
The world is talking about this. Now, I'm not saying the aircraft carriers got hit. It's a lot of warships surround aircraft carriers. What I'm saying is they probably wasted $200-300 million defending that aircraft carrier today. This is also the art of war, Sun Tzu. The art of war, Sun Tzu. They probably wasted about $200-300 million defending that warship today. Ooh, you can't do this every day, but it needs to be on the U.S. news because they was just bragging how Trump really showed the Houthi rebels. It's about time. Biden was too soft. You told them stop attacking cargo ships and they attacked our warships. I know Trump got to come out tonight and say something. You said something last night. You talked shit. I warned them not to do that. The Houthi rebels said they was going to crank it up a notch, and they say this is only the beginning. So what is Trump going to do? Are you going to send troops to Yemen? Russia came out today and said, no, you must have peace negotiations. Only peace. You see where it's going? While the U.S. talking about peace negotiations in Ukraine, while they funding weapons and arms to Ukraine, Putin said, two can play that game. Putin came out today and said, no, peace in Yemen. Come on, let's sit down and talk about it. You better believe behind closed doors, they sending plenty of weapons over there because they want the U.S. to get a taste of their own fucking medicine. Trump, he fell for a trap.
Leader of Ansarullah, a very long speech he had today, during which he severely criticized the Arab position for not taking action against Israel. He also said that the Yemeni position is independent of Iran because there have been many statements trying to link Iran with what Yemen is doing. And Yemen has proven many times that they are indeed independent. Of course, Iran supports them, but, they have their independent view. They are heavily backed by the Yemeni people. Millions are out in the streets every single week in Yemen to support Gaza and also to ask their government to take action, and they are. And he also continued to say that there will be more escalation coming. Of course, from the escalation coming, we are now expected to see another phase of direct attacks against Israel, by the way. Because Yemen, they know very well that the United States, or the genocide coalition led by the United States, which includes Britain as well, is primarily there to save Israel, to protect Israel by the demand of Israel as well. The United States and Britain using taxpayers' money to save a country committing war crimes and a genocide and a blockade against over 2 million people.
It's not about saving Israel no more, Trump. Houthi rebels, they attacking our warships. You got to save yourself now, Trump. All that, I'm here to defend Israel. Who the fuck don't defend us? All that saving Israel, like Captain Save a Hoe. You talk shit to the Houthi rebels. Man, why somebody didn't tell the president? You need to listen to Kurt Figure. He said it's a big time mistake. Those people are also defeaters of empires. They've been fighting empires 1,000 years. He need to read a history book. They're not scared of the U.S. Look, word around revolutionary town is the U.S. and NATO lost to the Taliban. Is that true? I'm just saying. The Taliban do not have no fucking advanced weapons, and everybody know what happened. You will never defeat the Yemeni rebels. They got weapons and they want war, and it's millions of them that want to fight. Trump, can you send millions of people to fight the Yemens? Fuck no. He thought he just was going to fly planes and talk tough. I don't think so. They attacked our warships, Trump. You got to do something about this.
People and wreaking havoc in the whole region against multiple countries all at once.
See?
They are planning, and they have these attacks ready. And from an Israeli perspective, Israel is ready as well. So there was a report in Israel today saying that Israel, on Channel 14, they said, source said that the defense establishment is preparing for the possibility of a Houthi attack on Israel by air and by sea. So we could be seeing, for the first time since October the 7th, an ongoing confrontation between Yemen and Israel without any other front being directly active against Israel. So in Gaza, there's still a ceasefire. Hamas are not attacking Israel. In Lebanon, there's a ceasefire. Israel is still breaching. Hezbollah are not attacking Israel. And it would only be Yemen. This is the first time this is going to happen. And that fact could change the way both Israel and the genocide coalition led by the United States operate against Yemen. They might be viewing Yemen now to be in a weak position, therefore potentially applying more pressure and using more aggressive measures against Yemen, despite the defiance, by the way. And the defiance that came from Yemen is exactly as it was before. Nothing is going to stop us. We will not stop the attacks up until Israel lifts the siege of Gaza. But now we actually have a genuine prospect to see a very large operation against Yemen that could potentially lead to an all-out war. Of course, primarily by Air Force. The United States, well, they failed in having a proper coalition. They ended up only being with Britain, really, to fight Yemen. Other European countries who are NATO members too said that they will be participating, only sent an observer, hardly anything. So it's very unlikely for the United States to have any sort of ground operation, apart from maybe a special operation.
And you lose. And this is going to be Trump's first major defeat. He's going to lose. You're not finna go on no air campaign. You kill a bunch of innocent people like that, then your ass is a war criminal. You're not no peace president if you think you're just going to be bombing in Yemen. No, if you tough, because you always talking shit. He said all hell is going to be bombed. It's going to be a war like the likes the world has never seen. Cool, they attacked the warships, bro. They don't want to talk no more. They saying come see about that shit. So you got to send the Navy SEALs. Send SEAL Team 6, man. What you waiting on, Trump? Huh? Y'all haven't defeated Hamas. Hezbollah is still standing strong, bro. Then you say you're going to go to war with Yemen. See, these people is drunk. They are drunk on imperialism, But this was a mistake by Trump, because all of the people the countries who don't like America, they want to make sure Yemen got everything they need to get a U.S. a bloody nose and a black eye. They want to humiliate Trump, but he did this to himself.
Here and there, but even that is very limited. But they will most likely increase the attacks against Yemen and have more aggressive attacks against Yemen, leading to more casualties with the Yemeni population. And yesterday, the initial report in Yemen said that over 40 strikes took place yesterday. But today, Yemen confirmed that it was actually over 170, which means this is a very aggressive and very quick response from the United States to the blockade that Yemen said that they will restart, and they actually indeed restarted. Now, how can that affect the situation on the ground? Of course, there's a ceasefire negotiation path going. Things are very tense with the ceasefire. Israel is breaching, Israel is killing people. Israel is also killing people in Lebanon. Today, they also killed more people in Lebanon. 2 people reported to be killed. 1 more reported to be killed in Gaza as well. But Benjamin Netanyahu declared that they are indeed sending a delegation. They're sending a delegation to Doha to continue the negotiations. The United States administration are criticizing Hamas. Witkoff is criticizing Hamas, saying that, oh, no, actually, they did not really, that's not a good response. Them saying that, oh, we will release 1 American Israeli and then 4 bodies. That's not satisfactory. Fact of the matter is, though, they are still talking, so there is a prospect of reaching some sort of a solution. This is all linked to Benjamin Netanyahu and Benjamin Netanyahu's plans to continue in power, to keep his coalition, to avoid all of the problems that he's having inside of Israel. And now things are escalating even further inside of Israel. Today, Benjamin Netanyahu declared that he will begin taking actions to sack the serving Shabak head Ronen Bar. Several days back, we spoke about the criticism that came from the ex-head of the Shabak,
For more on this, let's bring in Michael Malou, former senior strategic analyst at the Pentagon. Michael, great having you. Look, this is a violent group in Yemen antagonizing Israel and the Western world. There's alleged Iranian mentorship. This is a very complicated picture. Could you please give our international viewers a brief insight into what's going on here?
Yes, the Yemenis have vowed to continue attacks in the Straits on principally all Israeli shipping, as long as Israel bombs and bombs Gaza. There was a lull for 2 months now. There had been no attacks in the Gulf. I'm sorry, in the Red Sea, and then the Israelis announced that they were going to be cutting off all assistance, all humanitarian assistance to Gaza. And that then prompted the Yemenis to announce that they were going to resume attacks on Israeli shipping in the Red Sea. That then prompted the United States under Donald Trump to initiate these attacks. It means basically that they're going to go after any attacks on any shipping on anybody, and the fact too that U.S. warships in the past have been targeted is something that has up until now under the former Biden administration was just responded to with only had a very limited response. Under Donald Trump, however, it's going to be a different story, and he's telegraphed that now by saying that there will be much more intense attacks every time the Houthis launch attacks on any ships. Now, the Houthis have announced that they're going to be targeting both U.S. and U.K. Shipping in the area. Now, no shipping has really gone through that area for quite some time, and it is a critical international waterway for something like 12% of global trade. So it is important. There are other straits that are much more critical, but certainly this is one leading up through the Red Sea through the Suez Canal, and as a consequence, international shipping has had to go around at far greater expense as a result. Mm-hmm. Now the Houthis say that they would be stopping any kind of attacks such as this if the Israelis stop their activities in Gaza and allow humanitarian aid to flow. But that seems to have been stopped, and now this latest round has occurred. So now we're seeing a new era of escalation that's now occurring, and I have no idea where it's going to stop at this point.
Michael, a group that has the capability to shoot complex high-tech weapons at targets that are moving out at sea, sometimes beyond the line of sight. I mean, the capabilities they have are well above those of a ragtag band of criminals, right? Am I getting it right? How do they do this? How do they get to this point of this ability to do this?
Well, the United States contends that the Houthis indeed are receiving outside assistance, namely from Iran. So the attack that occurred today by the United States and Britain it was also meant to be a message to Iran, and they believe that U.S. intelligence believes that Iran has been supplying this more advanced capabilities. As it is, something like 18 ballistic missiles were just fired at the USS Truman, which was the launching pad for the F-18s that in fact attacked.
Your aircraft took off from the U.S. Aircraft carrier to go attack them, and they attacked the aircraft carrier. So do you think they gave a shit about anything you say, any of the tough talk from Trump? No. So there's no reason for anybody to go in the U.S. They was beating their chest last night. No reason for none of that. What you need to do now is, if they want to be Putin, all right, go to war in Yemen.
Yemen in this latest strike. So it's they're also it's a strike group. So it's more than one ship that would be involved. There's no report yet of any damage, if any, to U.S. warships in the Red Sea. But if there's continued firing at the U.S. warships, then this will continue, and it may not just stop there. It appears as though the United States this time was targeting the leadership of the Ansar Allah and the Houthis, and so they're going for they're trying to inflict a lot of damage as a consequence.
Michael Maloof, thank you for your insights.
Sure.
Give me 1 second.
stream. It's your host, Danny Haifong, and we have a special episode to cover the airstrikes that the United States, the UK, and in coordination with Israel that have been launched on Yemen in a major escalation in what could be seen as a new war, because not only did Donald Trump say that he was going to rain hell upon Yemen and has already killed or injured at least 100 plus, and there's probably many more than this. But this campaign, the United States has declared, will last weeks to even months. To discuss this, the implications, why this is happening, why the Donald Trump administration has decided now to go after Yemen, we have Professor Mohammed Morandi of the University of Tehran. Professor Morandi, thanks so much for joining.
Thank you very much for having me.
Yes, it's great to be with you again. Everybody hit the like button as you come onto the stream. That helps boost it in the algorithm. But Professor Morandi, the big question here is, with overnight, we saw major airstrikes, the United States, the UK, in coordination with Israel on Yemen and Sana'a and Sada and many other residential neighborhoods. The viral images now of children sound familiar, children being killed, women, civilians. Donald Trump has declared this to be a war on the Houthis, on Ansarallah. And of course, Ansarallah has said that they will respond in kind. Professor Marty, why is this happening now? And what do you make of this development, given that the Trump administration came in looking to save face from the West Asia catastrophe that the United States has brought upon the world? And now it seems like that is turning upside down.
Well, there could be different interpretations, and obviously, I don't know what goes on inside the White House, but one interpretation is, of course, that the United States is doing this right now for the sake of Israel, for the Israeli regime, because Ansarullah said that as long as the regime continues to impose a blockade and prevent, or a siege and prevent medicine and food and water from getting into Gaza, they will reimpose the siege on the Israeli regime. So if the Israeli regime continues to implement the agreement for which the United States is a guarantor, and Trump was behind the agreement, if the regime in Tel Aviv were to implement it, then Ansarullah or the Yemeni armed forces would not have made this move. So I think it's easy, one could say that Trump wants to help the Israeli regime impose this siege, impose starvation on women and children, in the hope of getting more concessions from the Palestinians, and that what Ansarullah is doing is that it's putting pressure on the Israeli regime, but also it makes the American camp look bad. Remember, all the countries in the region are in the American camp, basically, more or less, and all of the events over the last year and a half have been chipping away at their legitimacy in the eyes of the public. I mean, many of them were never legitimate, but in any case, it makes them look even less legitimate. Even Turkey, which is more democratic than the rest, it is seen as completely hypocritical. It does business. Erdogan does business with the Israeli regime. He transports oil, and he.
Revolutionary salute to our family at lunch break. Chronicles for the donation to the war chest. Revolution is way of life. Absolutely appreciate the love, family. Salute. He say salute from Baton Rouge. Salute to the boot, family. Salute to the boot.
Even helps them gain access to goods that cannot be accessed because of the blockade in the Red Sea. That's what he's been doing for a year and a half. Jordan, people are outraged by what's been going on. Saudi Arabia, the Emirates, across the Egypt, of course, across the Arab world, these countries are all, and beyond, the countries are seen as complicit. And then when Ansarullah stands up against the Israeli regime to protect starving Palestinians, it makes them look worse, and it makes people look with admiration increasingly at Ansarullah. So I think Trump is trying to help the Israeli regime enforce that siege on women and children. Also, I think it may have something to do with what's going on in Ukraine. I'm of the view that there will probably be peace in Ukraine ultimately. It will not be as swift as some had hoped. It will probably happen though, but it's complicated. And as your audience knows, because you have better guests than I, and your audience, they are very politically aware. President Putin does not need a ceasefire. In fact, if many of us were in his place right now, they would be seeking to push forward to get what they want, because they have the upper hand and the other side is falling apart. And so are there, those who've been backing the Kiev regime, they're also at each other's throats. The United States divide with Europe and so on. All of that we're seeing playing. That weakens the morale of the Ukrainian army itself when they see how things are going around them. So I think Trump will have to make concessions to the Russians, and in order not to look weak, this helps. He can behave like a murderous monster, which he is, and people in the United States, or at least many people in the United States, will see him as a strong president, especially the very same people who think that Christ supports genocide in Palestine. But I think it benefits him. It's sort of like the whole, Canada and Greenland and the Panama Canal rhetoric. It makes him look strong in the eyes of his base and his supporters.
He can't look strong fucking with Yemen. No, they're gonna keep attacking the U.S. He's gonna look like a phony and a bluffer and somebody who just be talking tough. He's not gonna be able to knock off Yemen just flying them planes. One of them planes gonna wind up getting knocked off. See Trump in the trap. Benjamin Netanyahu set that trap for him. He said all hell was gonna break loose. They attacked his ass the next day. He can't keep Trump. Where are you, bro? Bring your ass to the microphone. What are you gonna do now, Mr. President? You told us death and destruction yesterday, and they better not attack cargo ships. They attacked us today. America was attacked today, y'all. Yes, we was attacked. Our warships, that's us. We spent about 250, maybe 300 million defending our sailors, or they was going to lose their lives out there. World War III would have begun. You see what Trump got us into? Woofing at the Yemeni fighters who ready to die for this shit. I keep telling America do not have soldiers ready to die for this shit. All of those soldiers trying to come home and they want to go back to mama and daddy and they wife and see their kids. They want to be home for Christmas. Them people ain't thinking about that type of shit. And you shouldn't be fucking with people who living like that. This is going to be a big humiliation for Trump. I'm calling that right now. We got to tell the truth here. He will never defeat Yemen. And only he can declare war and get this over with quick for the United States, man. Don't drag it out.
And I think bombing Yemen, bombing countries always does good for U.S. presidents. It always it pushes up their approval numbers. And if you recall, the first time that he bombed Syria, even his opponents spoke about how he finally became the president of the United States. It was at the beginning of the Russiagate affair, but when he bombed Syria, this man of peace, everyone, the mainstream media, and they all rallied around him. So I think Yemen makes him look good in the eyes of many. Of course, in the eyes of the world, he looks like a murderous monster. But I don't think that his priority is not an international audience. It's the American people that he's looking at. So I think these are the two major issues. But one thing that we have to keep in mind, these are two interpretations that I can think of. One thing that I think is
revolutionary salute to our brother Andre Lanier for the donation to the war chest. Revolution is a way of life. Absolutely appreciate that love, family. Salute to you.
We can add to that is that this is in order to weaken the axis of resistance. But I think that is definitely a part of it. But I think that is a part of a broader picture. In other words, I think it goes along with other things, but it is definitely there. In other words, I think he wants to seem strong if he has to back down on Ukraine, and he wants to help Netanyahu to put pressure on the Palestinian people, the people in Gaza.
What I told y'all yesterday, hold on, revolutionary salute to our queen, Toolbox Evolution for the donation to the war chest. Revolution is a way of life. Absolutely appreciate the love, Queen. Salute to you. So I appreciate this news, best news on YouTube. It absolutely is, and I appreciate y'all showing up to the House of Revolution and help me keep the lights on. Now, you heard what the professor said. Trump trying to seem tough because he's weak in Ukraine. I told y'all that. I told y'all that. See, these people just come on here. I already told my people that. You just confirming what I said, so they know I'm the motherfucking truth. I told y'all that he begged Putin not to kill them neo-Nazis and NATO that's trapped. He came out and said, please spare them. Thousands of them trapped. They don't deserve to die. So he knew he had to come back and regain some type of image of a tough guy. He couldn't take Iran, all hell to break loose. So they picked, he got trapped again. I guarantee the U.S. military did it. Show him the least bit of trouble. But that was a lie. This the one that want to fight your ass the most. Iran trying to hold back. Iran ain't to attack your warships. The Houthi rebels is blocking the Red Sea. Iran not blocking nothing. They trying not to go to war with the U.S. They got too much to lose. The Houthi rebels have nothing, zero, zilch to lose. They got everything to gain from taking on the motherfucking U.S. This was a terrible mistake by Trump. Everything to gain, nigga.
Gaza, but then there's this broader objective to weaken the axis of resistance. He thinks, my understanding is that many in the West seem to think that the axis of resistance has been broken and that it is weak. And that if he can break the people of Yemen now, then the Israeli regime will reign supreme in that part of the region. I don't think that is as I've said before, I don't think that's an accurate analysis. I don't think Hezbollah and Hamas are, comparatively speaking, have been weakened compared to the Israeli regime. In war, everyone is weakened. The Russians have been definitely weakened. They've lost men, they've lost money, they've lost equipment. Everyone loses something in war. Hezbollah definitely lost in manpower and equipment. Hamas did too. And then, of course, the massacre of civilians in Lebanon, the targeting of civilians in Gaza, that's a loss too. But comparatively speaking, the resistance in Lebanon and in Gaza, I don't believe they lost. I think they won because the Israeli regime, relatively speaking, is weaker. How is it weaker? It has been exposed in the eyes of the world as a ethno-supremacist regime that is ugly, that is immoral, its very existence is immoral. And it's become like apartheid South Africa during the last years as people became more aware of what it was. Until now, that was not the case. The media was able to present the Israeli regime as a democracy, as a beacon of hope, and the extension of the free world in this barbaric, Middle East full of these Muslims and people like me. But that's not the case anymore. You see, even in the West, people are sympathizing with the Palestinians, with the Lebanese.
I like the professor. He's a good dude. That's a good dude. Very smart, very smart. I've been listening to this man since he was on Press TV. But he wished Israel was weaker. Israel not weaker. Israel is stronger thanks to the U.S., thanks to having our political system by the fucking throat. They control the U.S. That's why they will. It's like even if Hezbollah and Hamas did beat up on, and I don't believe that Israel want to finish off Hamas. I don't believe that now. I absolutely don't believe that. They need a Hamas so they can always do what the fuck they doing, killing the people off day by day. They need Hamas to be there. I don't believe they want to finish off Hamas. All they want to knock Iran ass down. But I absolutely don't believe that. They killed all their leaders. once again, I gotta tell the truth, killed all the Hezbollah leaders. That was great. I mean, Nasrallah, that's my boy. Whacked the president of Iran. They pretend like he died in a plane crash to save face. Come on. They killed the leader of Hamas in Iran. Come on. I mean, this Israel is not weaker. You know, it's shame on the Arab nation. They can't never. The people in the Arab world, they good people. I don't have no problem with them. The people in power, they can never get no fucking respect from it. Nigga, please, this is historical. They ass laid down, didn't do shit while the Palestinians was getting genocided, bro. They can't tell me nothing. The Muslim world, they can't say nothing. Assalamu alaikum to all my Muslim brothers, not none of y'all regular people. I'm talking about the leaders in the Muslim world. They can't say shit about nothing ever again. I don't want to fucking hear it. I don't want to hear it. No Muslim leaders in Africa. I cut from the ones that stand up, Burkina Faso, Mali, Niger. I know they got to do what they got to do, but they're Muslim people that get genocided over there in Palestine. The Arabs, they out of there. We see they're not gonna say shit, but try to pick on African nations like they're doing right now, causing terrorism. But as far as standing up to Israel, I don't know what the hell happened in the war in the 60s in the Arab-Israel war. I read about it. I heard about it. I don't, I see this what's going on. This is pathetic, bro. Yemen, legendary warriors for what the fuck they doing. Legendary warriors. This is what you're supposed to be doing. They the poorest Arab nation in the fucking world. They the ones standing up and fighting though. Good, because they the ones won't surrender. So it takes some people like that. Sometimes it be the ones that got nothing to lose, that pay all their dues and do what they got to do.
Hezbollah has become popular. Hamas has become a household name. Ansarullah in this region has become, they were despised 2 years ago simply because the whole Arabic media was against them, whether it was Al Jazeera or Al Arabiya or anyone else. But now public opinion holds them in high esteem, even though the Arabic media still tries to speak against them. Al Jazeera Arabic right now is trying to ignore the fact that as much as possible.
And one more thing this showed us, because when this first started off, I had to learn myself, when this first started off, I was very distraught at them people getting killed like that. And we were standing up. YouTube was wiping our videos out. I got them. And I had to remind people, Malcolm said some brave things about the Palestinians. People like, what the fuck they got to do with us? Malcolm said some good things about the Palestinians. George Jackson, great revolutionary, said some noble things about the Palestinians. Some of our heroes locked arms with their struggle. South Africa definitely, Nelson Mandela, Hugo Chavez, Fidel Castro, the liberation of South Africa was tied into the Palestinian struggle. And I said that to say this. But as a revolutionary, I got to sit back and see how this all play out. Now I know we can't be risking our lives and the position of our people. When people, I see now that the Arab world, they're not going to stand up for them. They didn't stand up. We can't help you. You're not going to stand up for yourself. We sympathize. We hate that this is going on. But if I was in complete control, I couldn't send those revolutionary forces. I couldn't do shit. We can't get killed in the streets of America. Why? Because I see what the fuck going on. They not doing. They got some brave fighters, the regular people. But we now see what's going on. And I know this would throw Malcolm for a loop if he could see now, because they trying to embrace arms with some individuals who they wasn't going to die for their own people, much less for our struggle. So now we can't ever. This was very good for me to see that the Arab nations was going to lay down like this. They laid down. So they can't ever in their life convince us that they give a shit about our well-being. Hell no, you don't give a damn about the people well-being in Gaza. We watched the murder. And you didn't do shit. We can't let them crank ourselves. They want some crash dummies to go at the Jews and to go at the whites. We not your fucking crash dummies and would never be.
The reason why the Americans are bombing is because they're supporting Palestinians. They don't want even Al Jazeera doesn't want to show Yemen as the supporting power behind the people of Gaza, partially because Doha, Qatar, along with Bahrain and the UAE, were used by the Americans in this attack, and so was Saudi airspace. So um, I don't think that they've been weakened compared to the Israeli regime, but they do seem to think that way. That's been what we constantly hear in the West, just like we've been hearing about Russia for almost 3 years, that Russia was losing the war, that they were, using washing machines and dishwashing machines and taking out the chips to fight the war and that sort of nonsense. But now we've seen that the reality is different from what we've been told. So I think that this is a broader project, a part of a broader project to destroy the resistance and, of course, to weaken Iran, which lies at the heart of the resistance.
Yeah, and Donald Trump essentially said as much in his unhinged post on Truth Social. Donald Trump said to Ansarallah, who he calls Houthi terrorists, "Your time is up. Your attacks must stop starting today. If they don't, hell will rain upon you like nothing you've ever seen before." The airstrikes had already begun, mind you. Then he goes to Iran. Support for the Houthis must end immediately. Do not threaten American people, their president, who has received one of the largest mandates in history, or worldwide shipping lanes. If you do, beware, because America will hold you fully accountable and we won't be nice about it. But Professor Morandi, despite this bluster and despite the obvious damage that these airstrikes are causing to Yemen, it's not like we haven't been down this road before. The Biden administration conducted numerous airstrikes. And while the Trump administration's officials are anonymously saying this could last weeks to months, this seems to be a very dangerous proposition given that Yemen not only is saying that it's going to continue the blockade, but also says it will escalate itself. It has hypersonic missiles. It has the potential to strike back. What do you make of this calculation that the Trump administration is making in terms of attempting to defeat and destroy Ansarallah? It seems to boggle the mind, given that he claims to want to undo everything Biden had done before.
Well, before I respond to that, which is a very good point, I should point out that his threats against Iran are not going to deter the country. And the leader has already twice in the last few days basically warned the Americans about Iran's strength. The Americans, Trump knows that if he strikes at Iran, that he's going to receive punishment, and that the leader said that they will be on the losing end. They will receive more punishment than they hand out. And it also shows that many people like to say, especially those who've done nothing for the resistance, who've done nothing for Gaza. They like to say that Iran's not doing anything, but Trump is basically admitting that Iran is helping Yemen. Iran is just as Iran has been helping Hamas, Islamic Jihad, Hezbollah, and the resistance, the whole resistance. So, I think that's something that some of these people should take note of, whereas their countries or their governments continue to do business as usual with the Israeli regime. The Iranians are paying a price. They're being threatened. They're funding the resistance, and they're sanctioned as a result of it. But Iran's not going to be deterred. And you rightly point out that this is not new. The Americans have been engaging in genocide in Yemen for a decade now. They helped the Saudi and the Emirati regimes initiate a genocidal war in Yemen that lasted for 7 years. The Americans helped establish a hunger siege in the Red Sea, very similar to what we have in Gaza. They would prevent food from getting it to Yemen, to northern Yemen, in order to put pressure on the people of Yemen. The Canadians, the British, the French, all of them were helping the Saudis and the Emirati Air Force, the Air Force of the two states, to constantly bomb Yemen. So Yemen survived 7 years of genocide with really endless money being put into it by the Saudis and the Emiratis. They use up a lot of their reserves in this genocidal war, and the media was supporting the genocide collectively. Back at the beginning, the Erdogan and Qatar supported the Saudi and Emirati war. It was only later when relations between Saudi Arabia and the Emirates and Qatar broke down that Qatar tilted away and Al Jazeera took a different tone. But Yemen then survived this. They became, over the 7 years, they became increasingly powerful. At the end, they started striking Saudi oil installations. And the Saudis haven't yet fully recovered, as far as I know, from those attacks. Even today, Saudi production, oil production has been hampered because of those strikes back near the end of the war.
And I want
So
to
the
note,
Saudis accepted.
I don't mean to interrupt, Professor Martin. I also want to note that during this initial bombing campaign, Saudi Arabia actually was the one country out of those still complicit in Israel's genocide, still complicit in what the United States does in the region, but was the one country out of the Gulf countries, Arab countries, monarchies, to not allow the United States to refuel during this bombing campaign. And I think you're elucidating why, but continue. Sorry.
Yes, but it is quite striking that, for example, Qatar, which uses Al Jazeera on the one hand to support the people of Gaza, at least with propaganda, but on the other hand support ISIS and Al Qaeda and the genocide in Syria. But here, Al Jazeera doesn't say anything about the role that Qatar, its government, plays in carrying out airstrikes on Yemen, which, again, I think it just shows the nature of Qatar and the nature of these regimes who pretend to be supportive of the Palestinian people. But in any case, Yemen has survived 7 years of genocide, and the Saudis and the Emiratis had to back down. And then they willingly went to support the Palestinian people. We all know that they blocked the Red Sea first to put pressure on the Israeli regime to end the genocide. They said, we're implementing the Genocide Convention. So basically what we have today is a repeat of what we had a year and a half ago, and the same logic. Yemen wants to stop the genocide, and I should praise them for that. And the Americans are insisting in supporting the genocide, whether it's Biden or Trump. So as many of us have said many times before, there is no difference between Biden and Trump when it comes to our part of the world, and when it comes to much of American foreign policy. But in our part of the world, there's no difference. They support genocide, they support terror, they support extremism, and it is all for the sake of the Israeli regime. It is literally almost all for the sake of the Israeli regime. They are sacrificing their own interests, because Europe obviously has sacrificed its own interests by destroying Libya. You have this huge influx of refugees coming from Africa. By destroying Syria, you have a huge influx or Iraq, you have this huge influx of people coming from West Asia into Europe, and that has caused huge tensions inside Europe. And many, of course, in Europe are blaming these refugees, whereas they should be blaming their own governments for destroying the lives of these refugees in their communities, in their cities, in their countries. But so the West is making these sacrifices for the sake of Israel. But the fact remains that Trump's policies and Biden's policies are not far apart. The tactics may be different. Trump, he supported a ceasefire, but in the implementation of the ceasefire, as it was being implemented, he said that the Palestinians must leave Gaza. Not even Biden said that. So you can't, those who are telling us or trying to sell us the idea that Trump is a peacemaker, I just find them to be, well, since some of them are my friends, I would say badly mistaken, but except for my friends, I'd say they're completely delusional.
Yeah, the rhetoric was quite clear to begin, Professor Morandi. I mean, when Trump came in, he immediately made Hamas, Hezbollah, Ansarallah public enemy number one. Ansarallah went on the terrorism list of the United States. So it's quite clear, even before the Riviera of the Middle East plan, that even with this ceasefire, that there were going to be escalations in the Middle East and West Asia. Of course, we have the threat to Iran, the letter that was delivered in some form or fashion to Iran, which was completely rejected by Iran itself. So it's quite obvious that the escalations were coming, and now we are here. So, Professor Morandi, my question to you is this. What do you expect Ansarallah's response to be to these airstrikes? Because the calculation from the United States is if it can kill as many civilians, if it can destroy the ports, the infrastructure, whatever's left of it in Yemen, that will defeat Ansarallah. But we have been here before, and so I'm curious as to what you believe Ansarallah's response will be, as they have promised it will be punishing and it will be hard.
Well, there is a big difference between Hezbollah, the situation for Hezbollah, and the situation for Hamas. I've said this before. Hamas and its allies like Islamic Jihad, they had the luxury of being fully in control of inside Gaza. Right? Hezbollah never had that luxury. Hezbollah, although more powerful than Hamas and Islamic Jihad combined, but they live in a country where you have 40 Western embassies, non-Western embassies that are client regimes of the United States, all NATO countries, regional countries, the Turkish embassy, even a couple of embassies that I don't want to name, besides the usual suspects, Muslim countries, and I don't mean Arab countries, I mean non-Arab countries that are deeply involved in intelligence gathering for Israel, for the Israeli regime. Then you have all these NGOs, USAID that we've heard a lot about these days, or NED and others, NED. The United States has been spending more money in Lebanon and the Europeans than in any other country, when you look at the population. So Hezbollah has always been surrounded, and they're always under threat. There's always intelligence gathering, Western intelligence agencies, regional intelligence agencies, all of them working to gather information and to use it against Hezbollah. And then they use their allies inside Lebanon, like the fascist group, the Lebanese forces, and others, to threaten Hezbollah. They're the same people who carried out the Sabra Shatila massacre in 1982 when the Israeli regime took Beirut. These people went into the refugee camp and murdered 3,500 innocent people in 36 hours under Israeli supervision. These are Western allies in Lebanon. So Hezbollah has that big disadvantage. And then, of course, the Israelis and Netanyahu and Erdogan and Biden conspired to undermine Syria, which is a different story. Although I would like to add one footnote, and that is that I don't want to name names because I don't want to make things complicated, but Syria is becoming very complicated. Some of us predicted, it's becoming increasingly worse for Turkey and Qatar. The country is really falling apart, and so is the economy. And countries in the region that are hostile towards Turkey and Qatar, they're increasingly concerned. And I'd like to point out that the fighting that took place before the genocide on the coast, before the genocide, there was fighting where militant groups rose up against these ISIS and Al-Qaeda forces. An Arab country was behind it. I'm not going to name country, but an Arab country was behind it. But in any case, in Yemen is different. Yemen has the advantage that Hamas had, in that it controls that territory. It controls most of Yemen. It controls the whole north of Yemen, and especially the mountain. These are mountainous areas, which make it very difficult for the Americans and the enemies of Ansarullah to wage war against them. They're in full control, so they cannot easily be infiltrated. Two, the area is much larger and the population is much bigger. So for the Americans to be able to infiltrate, for them to be able to discover assets, what assets exist, and so on, is much more difficult. Three, Yemen has had a decade of bombings. First the Saudis, and then a year and a half the Americans and the British and the Israelis, right? So they've already taken everything that they have underground. They've been doing that this whole decade because if they don't, they'd have already been destroyed. So all of their key assets are deep underground, much more so than Hezbollah or even Hamas, because they've been constantly bombed during this decade. So it is going to be, I think, literally impossible for the Americans to defeat them. It is going to be costly for the Americans. It is going to, again, destroy their destroyed image further. It is going to make the resistance more popular. It is going to make those who are complicit look more complicit. So Yemen, I think, is going to um, be able to resist. And Trump does not have any special card under his sleeve, as I may have said before, that Biden didn't have. It's not as if like he has some new special weapon or he has some special power that was not accessible to Biden before. Biden constantly bombed Yemen. The Israeli regime bombed Yemen. And the Saudis bombed Yemen day and night. And so did the Emiratis. So I think that Trump will not succeed. He will fail.
Hello, family.
But later on, he'll find a way just to pretend that he was victorious. I think I mean, and his supporters are. He once said if he shoot, I think in 2015 or 16, he once if I shoot someone on Fifth Avenue, uh, I'd still be elected, something like that. His supporters would still back him. He does have that. He does have those supporters, and so if he says later on that yes, we defeated them and they're crushed, then his base will say he did. But like, it is useful for him now if he wants to give concessions to the Russians, then he can be tough here and kill innocent people here and say, look how tough I am, and then that way maybe he can more easily give those concessions to the Russians.
Well, it certainly is a good way of moving people's attention back to West Asia. And a lot of people are questioning my choice of the use of the term new war, because indeed Yemen has been under siege, has been at war with the United States, backing the Saudi invasion, and then onward into this period of genocide in Gaza, where the United States was also facilitating strikes on Yemen, then multiple times under Biden. But what makes this to me unique, Professor Morandi, is that Donald Trump is explicitly stating that this is an ongoing military operation that will be lasting for a long period of time, which means, and I want your take on this, that it will not be the one-off or two off or whatever short period of time that we've seen in the past, where the United States and the UK would bomb infrastructure, then Ansar Allah would respond. That there is a likelihood of a exchange ongoing, and this occurs, Professor Marty, as the regional situation is not stable at all. That at any one of these flashpoints, including Iran, which Israel continuously threatens, the United States continuously threatens Iran. It seems that Donald Trump is launching a new kind of war on West Asia that fits his own particular preferences and the preferences of his administration. What's your take on this?
Yes, I think that definitely we're going to see an intensification of bombings in Yemen based on what he's saying, because if he doesn't do it, it will be a major back down. He, but it can't be more intense than the Saudis. It can't be more intense than what the Saudis and the Emiratis did. They carried out 7 years of genocidal war. They used hundreds of billions of dollars, the Saudis, from their reserves to constantly bomb Yemen day and night. There wasn't like one operation or one series. It was done all day, every day. And the Saudis, they had a lot of money to waste. And Now they're wasting the rest of it with NEOM and all these other crazy projects, but that's for a different day. So I don't think it's going to be costly for the United States. And for Yemen, it's their home turf. For the United States, it's a big logistical problem carrying out each and every one of these attacks. These aircraft carriers cost a lot to keep in the Red Sea, and so do all these ships. And then all these planes coming back and forth. And again, there's the issue of credibility. This does not look good at all for Qatar or for the Emirates or Bahrain or Saudi Arabia, or even those which are directly involved in these or indirectly involved in these airstrikes. But even other countries that continue to remain silent as the people of Gaza are being starved. Because people are looking, they know why, even though, as I said, Al Jazeera is trying to, Al Jazeera Arabic at least. I don't watch Al Jazeera or any news channel really, but Al Jazeera Arabic, from what I've been told over the last few hours, they've been trying to talk about the airstrikes, but not to link it to Gaza. But people link it to Gaza. People know that this is about Gaza. They know that the people of Yemen are being killed because they're saying we have to stop the genocide. And this is not something lost upon many people in the West as well. The tables have turned, Danny. The tables have turned. People, and I say this, it's anecdotal, but I do feel this. For decades, the West has been able to successfully demonize Iran. Iran has always been evil. Hezbollah, to a lesser degree. I mean, some people did like Hezbollah, but Iran was really evil. Ansarullah was disliked a lot, as I said, because the media completely against Ansarullah. Today, that whole narrative against Iran, I'm not saying the whole thing has collapsed, but it has been badly battered. And Iran has become very popular. I get messages every day, or I meet people who from different countries, or I speak to people in different parts of the world, and they say everyone literally that I'm in contact with says that the mood has changed across the world. Now people are looking to Iran or to the resistance for hope, and they dislike the United States, whether it's Biden or Trump. And I think this is something that the Americans don't appreciate. This is not good for the United States, and it's not good for its client regimes in the region. And the continuation of this, who knows? Maybe nothing will happen. But when we had the so-called Arab Spring or the awakening, no one thought anything was well. I guess most people, almost no one thought anything was going to happen, and then all these countries fell apart or their regimes collapsed. And we have to remember that Jake Sullivan, just 2 weeks before October the 7th, said that the Middle East, as he calls it, I would call it West Asia, North Africa, but the Middle East is, I think he said something like it's in one its most, it's in one of the best situations that it's been for many years. And literally a few days later, we had Hamas attack Israeli positions alongside the Gaza Strip. So these actions by the United States are costly. They make it more despised, and it weakens its allies, and it strengthens the resistance. It makes the resistance more popular.
Yeah, and Donald Trump has called this, Professor Morandi, decisive. That's what this is going to be. It's going to be decisive military action. But perhaps you could talk about, and you could link this to the entire resistance. That's exactly how Israel has talked, how the United States has talked about their genocidal military actions in the region, particularly Gaza, Lebanon, Ansarullah, and Yemen, and of course the strikes on Iran. But there's one theme that I notice is that none of the forces that they say they're taking decisive action on are eliminated or eradicated, despite that being the explicit goal. So what's going to change this time, Professor Morandi?
I don't think anything will change. I think you're correct. your viewers recall, it was just a couple of weeks ago when Trump said he's going to destroy Hamas, and if they don't release the prisoners or the hostages, as he calls them, by Saturday noon or something, that all hell will break loose. And what happened? Nothing. He didn't do anything because he's not capable of destroying Hamas, and he's not capable of destroying Islamic Jihad, and he's not capable of destroying Hezbollah, and he's obviously not capable of destroying Ansarullah. But this is, I think, this is just how the United States works. Part of this is also, by the way, the military-industrial complex. This money has to be spent. These missiles that are used, because they're going to be using very expensive missiles to bring down Ansarullah drones, cheap Ansarullah drones. They're going to be using very expensive missiles to bring down very cheap Ansarullah missiles. So this is going to be very costly, not just the logistical aspect, bringing in aircraft carriers and naval ships and airplanes and jets, but also bringing down or attempting to bring down missiles and drones. It's going to be very costly for the United States. But that is what I think that's part of what all these wars are about. It is about Netanyahu, as all of these wars in the region have been pushed by the Israeli regime, including the dirty war in Syria. And those who participated or supported the dirty war in Syria basically were, some wittingly and many unwittingly, they were supporting the Israeli regime. Those who now support Julani, throughout this period they've been supporting the Israeli regime. Many made a lot of money out of it. Those who worked in these think tanks, or those who were funded by NED or USAID, these Syrian so-called opposition people, and others. Many were just fooled, ordinary people who were fooled by the narrative and who were pushed towards sectarianism and so on, that sort of thing. But they've been basically helping the Israeli regime during this whole period of time. Nevertheless, I think that this is not going to end well for the United States. As I said, it's going to be very expensive. It's not going to succeed. And I think that ultimately, after many people die and after much suffering, the United States is going to probably quietly back off. And we have to keep in mind that, by the way, in a totally unrelated topic, that every day, Danny, every day, the Israelis are murdering Palestinians. Every single day. And the Americans are the guarantor of the ceasefire. Every day. Some days they're killing 10. I think yesterday they killed 11 Palestinians, including 2 reporters. And every day they're killing people in Lebanon. I think in the last 24 hours, they murdered 3 people. And in the West Bank, it's, 1 every day or 2. And this is all done amid Western media silence. It's done with the consent of the West, because they're the guarantors for the ceasefire, but they allow them to do so. So there is no ceasefire in Gaza. There's a starvation siege going on that's been going on for 2 weeks. You don't hear it in the Western media. They don't report it. Literally starving 2 million people in Gaza, but they won't say anything about it. And regular killings. And Ansarullah is saying, stop killing these people, stop starving these people, implement the ceasefire that you are the guarantor for. And for that, Ansarullah is being bombed. Yemen is being bombed. And what are they bombing? There is no infrastructure. The West and the Saudis and the Emiratis have destroyed Yemeni infrastructure already. They've bombed the country for a decade. There is no infrastructure. It's an impoverished country. But the people have very strong feelings for the Palestinians. They are humane and they are resistant. And those assets that they do have to help the Palestinians, those military assets, are, as I said, underground.
I'm sorry. Hold on. Oh no. Oh
What happened?
fuck. I can't get back. Sorry. Everything froze. All right, everybody. Sorry about that. I am still here.
And it is mountainous, and they have their assets are deep underground. And obviously, they are getting assistance from Iran. Iran does not hide that, but also the people of Yemen are very sophisticated. They have smart people. They if they're taught how to make missiles, they'll learn how to make missiles. If they tell them, if they're taught how to improve those missiles, they'll improve those missiles, despite the poverty, despite a decade of genocidal war imposed by the West on Ansarullah and the people of Yemen. They are very sophisticated. They have surface-to-air weapons. They've brought down they have brought down a $500 million worth of American drones.
So
Uh,
attention to that.
you know that's
$500 million. They wasted so much money defending themselves today, though. They don't want to tell the taxpayer. They got Yemen fucked up, man. Trump made a big mistake.
That's a very sophisticated air defense system. They have, surface to sea missiles. They have surface to surface missiles. They have drones. They have, these weapons are made in Yemen. They've been taught how to make them. They've been given the technology, but they're capable of using it despite the circumstances.
David versus Goliath, man.
So the Americans this is going to be very costly for them. Whether the aircraft carriers hit or not, the amount of money that the Americans are going to have to spend to defend those aircraft carriers and naval ships is huge. And remember, they lost what was it, an F-18 that was shot down by one of their own. They claimed was shot down by one of their own missiles a few months back.
And they act like
during the later days of
Biden. These people have no fucking. They just say they willing to say they shot their own plane down, then to tell the truth that your plane was shot down by the Yemenese rebels. Just say it. It's okay. No, we did it to ourselves. That's crazy.
During the clashes that were going on between Ansarullah, the Yemeni armed forces, and the U.S. So this is just going to, I think, it's going to be humiliating for Trump. But when it comes to our region, corporate media is with Trump. When it comes to Israel, when it comes to killing Muslims or brown people or Christians from our part of the region, they've shown no sympathy for Christians in our region. They destroyed the Christian population in Iraq. They've destroyed much of the Christian population
in Libya,
in Syria. They've forced they've allowed the Israelis to basically expel most Christians from Palestine. They have no sympathy for our part of the world, for anyone really. So I'm quite confident that Trump will not be able to succeed in Yemen, and Yemen is going to become just more popular. One of the interesting things about this war, and war is horrible, but and I don't mean the war in Iraq was Saddam Hussein was a monster, but the Americans, they supported him and then they turned against him. So even though the U.S. war wasn't legitimate, but Saddam Hussein was not a good guy. The war in Afghanistan, the war in Libya, the same. It was not legitimate. But this is a war about one side wanting to stop a genocide and the other side insisting to support a genocide. This is, even Ukraine, while I sympathize with the Russians, I don't, the Americans carried out a coup, they lied and expanded NATO. I don't have sympathy for NATO or the United States anywhere on this planet. But in the case of Yemen, or Lebanon for that sake, Hezbollah supporting and sacrificing for Yemen, for Gaza, this is a war about one side opposing genocide and the other side insisting on carrying out or supporting genocide. it's unbelievable.
Yeah. Yeah, it is unbelievable, Professor Morandi. And uh, the blowback is just astounding, and it's only going to get worse from here, because as we're talking about Yemen standing up for Gaza and for Palestine, we are also seeing just at every point the Trump administration, the United States as a whole, is having a hard time navigating the terrain of Israel pushing for what it wants, which is, of course, is more expansion, more genocide to get to that expansion. In the United States, also, as you said, the media is with Trump because all of them want to keep their foothold despite all of the rhetoric about withdrawing troops and all of this and ending wars. The fact is that the United States wants to keep its foothold in West Asia. It wants to support Israel 150% to do so. But at every turn, there are these huge and immense crises that are exploding. And Ansar Allah in Yemen is just one of them that it seems like the United States has dove deep into. But perhaps you can talk about that wider regional situation that the United States faces, which is, and that Israel faces as well as the guarantor of U.S. influence in the region.
I think the region is in a very dangerous situation because a lot of what's happening is driven by internal Israeli politics and Netanyahu's own troubles inside Palestine. And because of that, I think these wars came about. Before the war in Lebanon, I was telling people that I think that there will be war because he has to have war. And then Syria, I think the same. I don't think Syria is going to end well for Israel. I don't think it's going to end well for Turkey or Qatar either. Even though Israel and the Americans and the Israelis definitely want to balkanize Syria, but I don't think it's. I don't think they'll. I don't think they'll succeed. But Turkey getting a part of Syria and the Israelis getting another part. In the long run, I don't think that's going to work. I don't think anything that he's done over the past year and a half has been good for Israel. They can, just like in Ukraine, they can pretend that they won the war and say, "Oh, Hezbollah has been crushed and Hamas has been crushed and Ansarullah has been crushed. Everyone's been crushed, and Iran has no weapons. Iran is defenseless." They can say that, but it's just like in Russia. They said that for 3 years, and now look at the situation in Ukraine today. So Netanyahu may need war, and if he ultimately decides to do something, then the situation will escalate. If he attacks Iran, it is going to change the situation dramatically. And if the United States attacks Iran, the leader has said that Iran will strike back at the United States, and he said that Iran will hurt the United States more than the United States hurts Iran. And remember, this is not U.S. turf. This is just like in Ukraine. The advantage was with Russia. Why? Because Ukraine borders Russia. The United States, its aid has to go across the ocean, across Europe to get to Ukraine. That's a costly war. The war in Iraq, a lot of it, the expenses were because of the very fact that they had to move everything from the United States to Iraq or other bases to Iraq. The same was true in Afghanistan. In West Asia, the same is true. The United States has to bring in its military. It has to bring in more ammunition. And all of this is going to be very costly, and it's going to be a burden for the United States. And for Iran, it's much more easy to defend itself. It's much more easy for Yemen to defend itself. It's much more easy for the resistance to defend itself because it's their turf. And then in addition to that, the whole Persian Gulf region is full of glass palaces and glass houses. It's full of oil and gas installations and desalination plants and tankers and petrochemical plants. If there is war, all of these will just disappear. They won't be able, they will not be able to use them anymore. And that will bring down the global economy. And you know what the situation is right now. Many people in our part of the world don't appreciate what's going on in the United States, what's going on in Canada, what's going on in Europe with regards to the economy. Many people here still think that the Europe and the United States are some utopia where people are living the good life and life is very easy. The circumstances are not good for most people in the West. And if this happens, their economies would collapse. And then if the global economy collapses, what do people think is going to happen with immigration? Is it going to decrease or is it going to increase? It'll increase tenfold. If you have large numbers of people moving from Latin America to the United States, if the economy collapses, well, it's going to collapse everywhere. And so the places that are worse off, they're still going to be moving towards that land of hope or opportunity, even though it's an illusion. And the same is true in our part of the world. The consequences of war in our region are immense and they are mind boggling. And it's really something that's impossible for me to imagine. So I think the Americans don't want war. I think that it's not a good thing for the Israelis to have war. But Netanyahu wants to remain in power at all costs. And that is what could bring about war.
Yeah, and Israel's Israel's situation is one that we could certainly get into because Netanyahu himself and the entire Israeli project, when it was embarrassed and set back the way it was on October 7th, obviously made a
I
decision.
lost your voice.
Sorry, can you hear me? Professor Morandi? No? Professor Morandi, are you there? So Professor Morandi,
Yes.
you there? Sorry.
Yes.
All right, cool.
Have you had a problem with my connection?
I have not. I haven't seen anything in the chat either.
Okay.
Well,
Okay.
all right. Well, let's talk about then the you were getting into Netanyahu. I wanted to now connect some dots to perhaps put a conclusion on this conversation, Professor Morandi, because oftentimes when new presidents come into office in the United States, what ends up happening in the foreign policy realm is that we start splitting it all up. And that's where the partisanship, the support for Trump versus the support for Democrats, and all of this, which this show is not about at all. This show takes a very firm stance against both parties as one war party. But what ends up happening is that, okay, you have Russia over here, you have China over here, you have the Middle East over here, and of course the rest of the world the US is at war with, and it all gets fragmented and split up. And so there can be excuses made for someone like Donald Trump. But I wanted to ask you about the connections here, because what I noticed when Donald Trump came into office was that he rushed the ceasefire to save face around Gaza, because that would have been a disaster to inherit as actively as that genocide was going on. He wanted to keep the Lebanon ceasefire going because of for the same reasons. He did not want to inherit that kind of bloodshed, even though, as we've both noted here, that bloodshed continues at perhaps a smaller scale.
And the occupation continues.
Yes.
And the occupation continues.
Exactly. The occupation continues in Lebanon. So, but when he came in after that, there was not a lot of attention on West Asia until he started talking about Iran and targeting Hamas and Ansarallah and Iran and Hezbollah as these kind of terrorist proxies that all needed to be weakened and trimmed down because Biden was the one who allowed all of this to get out of control. But from that rhetoric alone, Professor Morandi, it was quite clear that there was going to be an escalation of some kind. And now we see it with Yemen, but we also see that all of this really speaks to Iran, that the United States does still have this hope that it can weaken Iran. And under the first Trump administration, this was a key point of its agenda, which was to isolate and weaken Iran during that period. So, what do you make of this overall agenda, as well as if you could comment on too, because Russia's come out against what's happening in Yemen, and there are deepening talks between Russia, China, and Iran of basically taking care of their own matters that the United States continues to complain about, whether it's military cooperation or nuclear cooperation. So, what do you make of this overall situation now that the Trump administration is showing its true colors?
I think the important thing that we should remember is that this situation that we have today is very different from what we had during the first Trump presidency. The United States is not the United States of that period, and the rest of the world is not the same. Much has changed. China is more immune to US sanctions and tariffs because they've been antagonized over these 8 years. So China is less vulnerable than it was back then, and therefore in a stronger position than it was back then. Russia, we all know how different things are today. It is much less vulnerable because the West has used all of the weapons at its disposal. It no longer has leverage. They can pretend to do sanctions more, just like with Iran. You have the same with Iran. Iran has the sanctions we have maximum pressure sanctions right now. They've never been removed. Biden never removed any sanctions. So Trump's room for maneuver is much more limited. These countries are less vulnerable. The United States and the West are more divided and much weaker because of the economy, because of the endless wars, because of the war in Ukraine, because of the genocide in Gaza. So Trump it doesn't have the sort of, this is not the same world that we're living in today as 7, 8 years ago, or even 4 years ago. So I think it's going to be much more difficult for Trump to behave like he did back then. Even back then, he had no real success. He never undermined Russia, he never undermined Iran, he never undermined China. But I think his ability to hurt is going to be more limited, and the United States is more vulnerable. And there's a lot of talk about an economic crisis in the United States approaching. I'm not an economist, I can't comment, but the situation is not good. And the tariff wars, the United States is in conflict with a host of other entities, unlike back then during the first Trump years. So I think it's going to be much more difficult for Trump to behave like he did before. He wasn't successful back then. He's definitely not going to be successful now. Trump and the United States, the political establishment is united against Iran because of Israel. Otherwise, as I said a bit earlier, this region, if it wasn't for the Israeli regime, this region would have had very good relations with the West. Business and trade would have been normal. You wouldn't have these millions of refugees in Europe. No one wants to leave their homes. So, but because of the Israeli regime, and that's why I always say that the existence of this regime is, morality aside, it just shows the West to be completely immoral, but it is detrimental to Western interests. It is a burden to the West, a big burden. And we're seeing that play out. So I don't believe that Trump has the ability. I think there are probably a lot of people in the military who are telling Trump, don't pick a fight with Iran. But nothing is impossible. And the leader said Iran will strike back very hard and make sure that the Americans are hurt more than the Iranians. And we always have to keep in mind that Netanyahu is a desperate person, and he is willing to do anything to stay in power.
Yeah, yeah, and another interesting follow up to this, Professor Morandi, that you were saying that I also believe that the Trump administration is entering in a much weaker position. The entire United States is a hegemonic position was entering a much weaker position under Trump than what was being given credit for. And some of the proof to that is the Trump administration's crackdown here in the United States on people like Mahmoud Khalil trying to deport pro-Palestine activists, while at the same time, as we've noted, escalating the situation in the region in a way that helps Trump save face. And now it seems like he's tripped over his
And
own
lost the
wire.
voice.
He's tripped over his own wire. And it seems like, Professor Morandi, you might have lost me. Can you hear me?
I
No?
can hear you.
Okay. It seems that Trump is now tripping over his own wires. Not only is he's trying to prepare the way for the escalation to come by suppressing dissent inside of the United States, while also trying to, in his own way, weaken the axis of resistance. And now he's become embroiled in a direct confrontation with that axis of resistance. So your comments on this, it seems like exactly what you said. This is not really peace through strength. I called it something like weakness through war. Your thoughts?
Yes, and by the way, what is happening in the United States is being seen across the world. And U.S. universities are going to lose a lot of customers. A lot of people will probably think twice about sending their kids to the United States because they could get into trouble, or they could get expelled, or they could get punished. I mean, if I was in the United States, I'd probably be sent to Guantanamo Bay with my political views. So imagine how many people think, and again, this is just another. I mean, this is something that Biden did as well. He quelled the student protests. Many of them Jews. We should always remember that, but who were protesting. But
That's a way of life.
but Trump has intensified this, and this again is damaging the United States immensely. The United States can no longer pretend, even though I never believed it, and many others never believed it. But no one believes that this is the free world, or the United States believes in, or the Europeans believe in freedom and democracy. They're just exposing themselves as they decline. They are finding it more difficult to keep on the mask. Look at what happened in Romania, and look at what's happening, with regards to foreign students in the United States, or the arrests and harassments of journalists in Europe, who are not even being arrested because of internal dissent. They're being arrested because they're protesting about what's happening in Palestine. They're not even protesting about their government, doing injustice at home. They're saying this other regime, where we shouldn't be supporting it, them carry out genocide, and they're being arrested and they're being suppressed. And this is all of this has brought the empire. It has brought it down. Basically, its soft power has crashed and been destroyed, but the hard power of the empire, I think, is crumbling.
Yeah, yeah, it certainly is, and we can see that too. A lot of people confuse this, Professor Rodney. They look at Iran, for example, not taking part in Operation True Promise 3 just yet, and they look at the situation since the ceasefire in Gaza and Lebanon, and they see a situation that's been muted, and they declare that actually Israel and the United States took control of the situation. But in fact, uh, how it could be seen is that not only did Gaza force that ceasefire, the resistance forced that ceasefire on to the United States, given that it held out and it fought back all the way until the new presidential administration. and it would have kept going if that ceasefire didn't happen. But also, the United States still has absolutely no capability of destroying, some friends of ours may disagree, of destroying Iran without a catastrophic set of consequences for itself, including for its, as I said, the guarantor of its influence in the region, Israel.
Yes, and also one other thing, and that is Syria. Syria, what we've seen in Syria has vindicated the resistance. Many people who are now opposed to U.S. policy in Syria and opposed to what's going on in Syria, a decade ago thought very differently. Many of my friends, many of our mutual friends, their views have evolved because they've seen the reality of what's going on. A lot has been exposed, and the genocide that took place on the coast, I think, opened the eyes of those who are willing to have their eyes open. So this does not look good for the West, and even Vance is sort of admitting in a way that just a couple of days ago about how the West has been, and one thing that how they've been supporting these extremists. But one thing that I'd like your viewers always to remember, that these are not Islamic terrorists. These are not Islamic extremists. These are creations of the CIA. These are creations of Western intelligence agencies. They have nothing to do with Islam. Just like the Nazis have nothing to do with Christianity, or Zionism has nothing to do with the Judaism of people like, our friends at Electronic Intifada or the Gray Zone or all the other good people who are doing really good work against Zionism. Those people, we have many friends, both of us, who are Jews who have nothing to do with Zionism. So these extremists, these terrorists have nothing to do with Islam. In fact, before the dirty war in Afghanistan, which Brzezinski and Carter, the so-called human rights president, before they initiated this whole process of weaponizing this small extremist ideology of Wahhabism that was in Saudi Arabia, we didn't have this sort of problem across the region. The region wasn't a utopia, but the very fact that in Syria and Iraq, you had different people, in Iran, you had different people from different religions, and in Afghanistan and different ethnic groups living together, not always necessarily peacefully, but they did exist. But now we see things have changed because of the slaughter and the massacres that have taken place by these groups that were created by the CIA. That sadly, Erdogan and Qatar and oil and gas, other oil-rich countries in the Persian Gulf and the Israeli regime, of course, that they've been supporting for these 40-some years, this has created all this devastation. The same people who carried out 9/11 were the people who the Americans funded in Afghanistan. And then after 9/11, they began funding them again in Libya and in Syria, and so on. So, to call them Islamic terrorists, they're not indigenous to. This is not Sunni Islam. This is not Islam at all. This is something that intelligence agencies have created, and their client regimes in the region spent many, many, many tens of billions, if not hundreds of billions of dollars, to promote them in line with Western policy, to use them in Central Asia, to use them against Iran, to use them against Russia, to use them against China, to use them against whoever they want to bring down. So this is something that I really insist upon, that this has nothing to do with the Islam that we know. This is American Islam. This is meaning Western, CIA Islam. This is British Islam, meaning intelligence agency, but it's not our Islam. Our Islam is against the genocide. Our Islam is the Islam of Ansar Allah, the Islam the Islam of Hezbollah, where they sacrifice themselves to protect the Palestinian people. Our Islam has the same views as in many ways as all those young Jews in the United States who are arrested for protesting against or who were harassed or who were punished or Christians or others who were protesting against the genocide. We're against the genocide. That I think is the number one issue in the world that we live in today. One side is pro-genocide and one side is anti-genocide. One side is fighting to commit genocide and the other side is fighting to stop the genocide. It's as simple as that. Some of them are carrying arms and they are the axis of resistance. Others are a part of the broader resistance, and they exist in countries across the world where they protest, where they boycott, and I think they should boycott American goods now, but where they protest and boycott and do what they can do to create awareness.
Yeah, all very good points, and perhaps I can get your final comment very briefly just on this as to conclude all of this. I didn't think, Professor Martin, I lived through a time, given everything that you just said. A lot of focus here on this channel before the genocide in Gaza was on big rising multipolar powers like Russia and China. But after the genocide as the genocide in Gaza exploded, as Palestine literally and figuratively was placed back into the spotlight, back on the map, so to speak, of people's consciousness, we have seen not just that the United States cannot arrest the development of a multipolar world of rising powers like China, Russia, and Iran, but that now we see that the resistance to empire, which never begins with big countries and powers that can compete with it at an equal scale. Usually it begins very small with resistance that on the surface does not look like it can compete militarily or in terms of might to the empire. But we are witnessing with Ansar Allah, for example, that this political force of the Yemeni people, along with the rest of the axis of resistance, despite all of the odds and despite the catastrophe, humanitarian and otherwise, that has been leveled upon them, they are leading the way in frightening the empire, the U.S. empire, to the point where it has to take drastic actions that ultimately backfire. So your final comments on this, because I think that's really, for me, the lesson that people should take away as they continue to follow and oppose the absolutely devastating and murderous consequences that comes from this desperation.
I know many will not agree with me, and but this is my view, and that is that the axis of resistance and the broader resistance have won already because they are on the moral side. Some people say politics is all is completely immoral. I don't believe that. I believe that all those people who protest on the streets, all those people who boycott, all those people who stand against, they are political and they're moral. You can pursue national interests, you can pursue interests and also have morality. This is something that the West always pretends to do, but it's the exact opposite, the collective West, the regimes in power. But the axis of resistance has won the war. Hezbollah, they sacrificed their kids to fight to spare Palestinian children, to spare them in this genocide. Mothers and wives sent their husbands and sons to fight and be killed, be martyred, to protect the Gazans. The same is true with Ansar Allah. The same is true with those students who've been kicked out of university, whether it's in Columbia or somewhere else, because they took a moral stand. They've already won. And the side that supports genocide, they've lost. They've already lost. The Israeli regime may be around for a few more years, but it's already dead. And their supporters are exposed. They can continue to gain support among those cult members who believe, again, that Christ supports genocide somehow in Palestine. I think these are enemies of Christianity who put Christ in such a whose frame he would be be supporting the oppressed, or Moses, or the Prophet Muhammad, ISIS and Al Qaeda. These are the enemies of Christianity. These are the enemies of Judaism. These are the enemies of Islam. I think that they've already lost. And the collective West, the empire, they've lost in the eyes of the world. They've been exposed, and they have been exposed to many of their own people. Not just for what they've done in our region, not just for the stupid war in Ukraine, but also now for what's going on in Europe, the injustices, the accumulation of wealth by a few, the subsidizing of the rich, and the disenfranchisement of the poor. People's eyes are open. So I think that, and I believe in moral victories, and I think moral victories count for a lot. That's why life, I think, is worth living.
Yeah, and oftentimes those victories that deal more in just resisting and continuing to resist often can lead to bigger, or at least maybe more, those qualitative victories can lead to quantitative victories, sometimes in an extended period of time, other times in a rapid fashion. So a lot is left to be said, Professor Morandi. And I think this was a great initial conversation as we follow what is the Trump administration's initial foray into escalating and renewing, and if not starting, a new war among the many wars that the United States is waging in West Asia, including and of course centering on the Palestinian cause. Professor Morandi, it's been great to be with you today. Do you have any final word before we head out?
No, I just
That was the unmistakable roar and unrelenting intensity of the airstrikes President Donald Trump ordered on Yemen's military strongholds, unfolding just weeks after many had dared to hope for a lull in Middle Eastern hostilities. Yemen, in its defiant stance, had announced a reimposition of its blockade in the Red Sea, positioning it as a counter-response to Israel's controversial plans to cut off water and electricity supplies to Gaza, an action many saw as a blatant affront to human rights and a bold disregard for international law. Trump's decision, swift and calculated, wasn't just a military operation, but a loud message that America's foreign policy under his leadership would be as aggressive as it was unapologetic. The strikes were relentless, thundering across the night for hours, and according to emerging reports, left a grim aftermath of 9 fatalities and many more injured. Critical Yemeni defense structures, command centers, ammunition depots, air defense installations were devastated in a display of force designed to paralyze. Yet, the narrative Trump pushed on his Truth Social painted a different picture. He presented these strikes as necessary actions to dismantle Yemen's blockade and ensure freedom of navigation through the Red Sea. He declared that these operations might last days, possibly weeks, underlining his commitment to what he framed as safeguarding international waters.
Houthi rebels in Yemen say at least 9 people have been killed in U.S. airstrikes on the capital, Sana'a.
President Trump has announced orders to attack the Houthi in Yemen. This was the first strike on the Houthis under the second Trump administration.
I do want to get you out to some breaking news that we are following as we take a live look over the White House here in D.C. President Donald Trump announcing that he has now ordered airstrikes against the Houthi rebels in Yemen.
However, a haunting question lingers beneath the dust and debris. Will such aggression really deter Yemen from fulfilling what it sees as its moral and strategic pledge to support Palestine? Or will it ignite an even fiercer resistance? At OMT News, we're dedicated to bringing you sharp, no-nonsense analysis on the conflicts shaping Palestine, Yemen, and beyond. In a world where propaganda drowns out truth and narratives are manipulated to fit political agendas, we refuse to take the easy route. We don't do spin. We don't take sides. We dig deep, call out hypocrisy, and break down the complexities others ignore. But independent reporting like this doesn't thrive without your support. If you value balanced, unfiltered discussion, don't let efforts to silence voices like ours win. Like and share this video to push back against the algorithm and IDF internet bots. Subscribe to stay ahead of the conversation.
My proudest legacy will be that of a peacemaker.
Trump's online proclamations carried his usual bravado, labeling Yemen's military as terrorists and accusing Biden of weakness for allegedly allowing Yemen's aggression in the Red Sea. He presented himself as the corrective force, the leader who would stamp out threats and restore American dominance. Yet, what he conveniently omitted was Yemen's deeper motive, a defiance not rooted in mindless aggression, but in a resistance against Israel's increasing hostility towards Gaza. Yemen's blockade was framed by them as a stand against oppression, a symbolic gesture in solidarity with Palestine's plight. Furthermore, Trump's rhetoric brushed over a crucial historical reality. Yemen has been the graveyard of empires, a land where foreign military ventures have been humbled. Bigger and better equipped powers have faltered on Yemeni soil, crushed under the weight of their miscalculations. The history Trump ignored might very well be the force shaping Yemen's next move.
For 4 years, we had no wars except we defeated ISIS. We defeated ISIS in record time.
No, he didn't.
But we had no wars. They said, he will start a war. I'm not going to start a war. I'm going to stop wars. But this is also a massive victory for democracy and for freedom. Together, we're going to unlock America's glorious destiny, and we're going to achieve the most incredible future for our people.
And here lies the irony. Trump claims America has been dragged into war by Yemeni aggression, but Yemen never sought a fight with America. Their blockade, according to them, wasn't an act of war, but a calculated pressure tactic to force Israel to adhere to ceasefire agreements. In their eyes, it's the American intervention that escalated this into an outright confrontation. And if Yemen's warnings are to be believed, the Americans may have underestimated what's coming. There are whispers of undisclosed weapons, of strategic surprises that could shift the balance. Yemen isn't just preparing for defense, it's contemplating retaliation. The question is, how far will they go? The potential implications of this escalation are unsettling. Early indications suggest that the conflict's ripples could stretch across the entire Middle East. Already, intelligence points to possible regional involvement. British KC-2 refueling aircraft were reportedly spotted off Jeddah, likely supporting fighter jets. Meanwhile, American RC-135V Rivet Joint Spy planes and KC-135R tankers have been observed returning to Al Udeid Air Base in Qatar. Adding to the complexity, the American MQ-4C Triton surveillance drone was seen departing from Al Dhafra Air Base, heading towards Yemen, with its transponders mysteriously switched off. This level of coordination suggests that other powers might be entangling themselves in the conflict's web. And if Yemen retaliates, especially by targeting oil fields and gas infrastructures in Saudi Arabia or Qatar, the fallout could escalate into a regional war, precisely the catastrophe that so many have been striving to avoid.
يا ساتر يا رب يا ساتر يا رب ضربوا صاروخ بس مدري ايش اللي بيتفجر فطناس يصيح الان يا ساتر يا رب يا ساتر يا رب هذا الان في صيانة الحصبة يا ساتر يا رب يا الله يا الله يا الله الطف على الناس يا رب يا الله لطفك بالناس يا رب يا الله لطفك بالناس يا رب يا الله يا الله يا الله لطفك بالناس يا رب صرف ثاني يا رب يا الله شكرك يا رب يا الله يا الله لطفك بالناس يا رب يا الله لطفك بالناس يا رب يا الله لطفك بالناس يا رب
الآن في صاعدة يتم الضرب من قبل الطيران الأمريكي الإسرائيلي في محافظة الصاعدة والله لم يرضى ما تعملون لا يلومون أنفسهم
ايوه شو تقال؟ في المعهد
Yemen's response so far has been cryptic but ominous. Their officials have vowed to match escalation with escalation, signaling that this conflict won't be one-sided. Their health authorities reported grim losses, at least 13 civilians killed and 9 injured in strikes on Sana'a, while another 11, including women and children, were killed in northern Sada. Yemen's government has condemned the American strikes as war crimes, and though they have not explicitly outlined their retaliation plans, their warnings suggest a response designed to hurt. The world is left to wonder when and how that blow will come. Speculation is rife about Yemen's next move. Some believe Yemen might widen the battlefield, launching attacks on neighboring nations like Saudi Arabia or Qatar, which allegedly facilitated the American assault. Others argue that Yemen, despite its tough rhetoric, may hesitate to directly confront a volatile Trump administration, especially one eager to project strength after criticizing Biden's supposed weakness. But a more dangerous possibility looms, that this isn't just about Yemen anymore. Many suspect Iran's shadow is lengthening over this conflict, hinting at broader strategic stakes. Iran, deeply entangled in Yemen's political landscape, could now be calculating its next step. Trump's post-raid warning to Iran only deepened these fears. He bluntly threatened Iran with devastating attacks if it didn't cease its support for Yemen's government. And that's where things get especially dangerous. Iran's nuclear ambitions, always a point of contention, may now take on a new urgency. If Iran concludes that Trump's unpredictability makes it a target, it might view nuclear armament as the ultimate deterrent. The anxiety is that Iran, in the face of rising threats, could accelerate its uranium enrichment, edging dangerously close to weapons-grade levels. This isn't just speculation, it's a calculated survival strategy. For Iran, the stakes have never been higher, and for the world, the risk of a broader Middle Eastern conflict looms large. If history is any compass, then the Yemeni and Iranian response to the recent American strikes on Yemen may unfold not with sudden, reckless escalation, but with a calculated, patient, and deeply strategic approach that reflects the resilience and defiance that has defined Yemen's long history of resisting foreign dominance. Yemen is a land that has been shaped by centuries of conflict, a crucible in which empires have come to test their might and, more often than not, have left in defeat. The British, the Soviets, the Saudis, and even the Americans have all, at various points in history, tasted the bitter reality of Yemen's terrain, its people, and its indomitable will to resist. And now, with Iran as an ever-present regional ally, the dimensions of retaliation stretch beyond Yemen's borders into a far broader theater of conflict. To understand what Yemen's response could look like, one must first understand the terrain both literal and metaphorical, on which they stand. Yemen is a land of rugged mountains and treacherous deserts, of tribes whose loyalty is to their land and their people before any foreign interest. Throughout history, these natural defenses have served as both shield and sword, breaking the ambitions of external forces. When the British sought to impose their will during the Aden emergency in the 1960s, they were met not by open battles, but by guerrilla warfare that sapped their strength, eroded their morale, and turned victory into an illusion. The same tactics have defined Yemen's modern conflicts. The Saudi-led coalition, with all its advanced weaponry and superior air power, has spent nearly a decade trying and failing to bring Yemen to its knees. Instead, Yemen has turned its relative weakness into strength, leveraging its deep knowledge of the terrain and adopting asymmetrical tactics to exhaust, frustrate, and ultimately force its adversaries to reconsider the cost of their aggression. And so, in response to these new American strikes, it is unlikely that Yemen would rush headlong into a direct confrontation. Rather, the world should brace for a response shaped by patience, attrition, and unpredictability. Yemen's retaliation may begin with intensifying its blockade in the Red Sea, disrupting shipping routes in ways that choke international trade and place economic pressure on those who supported the strikes. Already, the Red Sea has become a contested corridor, and with Yemen's proven capacity to deploy anti-ship missiles and drone attacks, it is plausible that the blockade could be strengthened, escalating risks for commercial vessels and international naval forces alike. This is not just a military tactic, but a form of economic warfare, one designed to turn the financial screws on America's allies and challenge global shipping confidence. But beyond the sea, Yemen's mountainous regions could become the launchpad for a more prolonged campaign of attrition. Yemeni forces, drawing from their deep well of historical tactics, may begin targeting strategic infrastructure in Saudi Arabia and the UAE oil fields, pipelines, refineries. These are not new targets, but Yemen's precision and timing have evolved. The attack on Saudi Aramco in 2019 was a defining moment, demonstrating Yemen's ability to strike at the economic heart of its adversary. The message then was clear: no fortress is impenetrable. If such attacks are reignited, they will be aimed at sending a stark warning that aggression against Yemen carries costs far beyond the battlefield. Such actions, carefully calculated and executed, could ripple through global oil markets, impacting not only local economies, but the global financial landscape. Then comes the question of Iran. Iran's influence in Yemen is often viewed through the lens of weapons support and political backing, but the reality is more complex. Iran sees itself as the patron of resistance movements across the Middle East, from Lebanon to Iraq, and Yemen fits neatly into that broader strategic framework. If Iran chooses to respond to America's aggression indirectly, it may do so by encouraging Yemen to intensify its asymmetrical strategies, while simultaneously amplifying its own regional posture. This could involve Iran deploying its advanced drone and missile technology to Yemen, enhancing Yemen's capacity to strike with greater range and precision. It might also mean providing more sophisticated intelligence support, helping Yemen identify and target vulnerabilities in Saudi and American operations. However, Iran's response may not be confined to the borders of Yemen. The Islamic Republic has, over the years, mastered the art of using its vast network of allies and proxies to project power far beyond its immediate reach. Iranian-aligned forces in Iraq and Syria could be mobilized to target American bases, stretching US military focus thin across multiple fronts. Lebanon's Hezbollah, one of Iran's most formidable allies, may also become a player in the broader retaliation strategy, intensifying tensions along Israel's northern border. Iran understands that direct confrontation with America is dangerous, but it also knows how to wage war in the shadows, using proxies and strategic patience to inflict cumulative damage. Furthermore, Iran may choose to escalate its nuclear program, viewing America's aggression as further justification for advancing its defense capabilities. The calculation is simple. If Iran's deterrence is questioned, then strengthening its nuclear posture becomes a necessity. In the coming months, we could witness Iran accelerate its enrichment of uranium, not necessarily as a step towards weaponization, but as a statement of defiance, a warning that it will not be cowed by threats. Such a move would send shockwaves across the region, complicating diplomatic efforts and raising the stakes for all involved. There is also the distinct possibility of cyber warfare becoming a key component of retaliation. Both Yemen and Iran have demonstrated capabilities in this domain, and targeting critical infrastructure such as power grids, oil distribution networks, or even financial systems could serve as a non-conventional but highly effective form of counterstrike. Such attacks could create chaos without the need for direct military confrontation, forcing adversaries to face invisible threats that destabilize their economic and political stability. Yet, amidst all these scenarios, one thing remains certain. Neither Yemen nor Iran will rush their response. History has taught them the value of patience, the power of choosing the right moment, and the strength that comes from fighting on their terms, not their enemies. Yemen has survived sieges, bombings, and invasions, and it has done so by outlasting its adversaries, by turning every setback into a lesson, and by knowing that wars are not won in a single battle, but in the slow, grinding erosion of an enemy's will. So, when the next strike comes, it may not be loud or immediately visible. It might be a ship struck in the dead of night, a refinery mysteriously disabled, a drone quietly breaching defended airspace. It might be cyber systems faltering, diplomatic alliances straining, or regional tensions subtly escalating. It will be a war of shadows, of small victories and accumulating losses. It will be the kind of war that Yemen has fought for centuries, one that does not rely on overwhelming power but on resilience, knowledge of the terrain, and the unwavering belief that they can outlast any invader. Iran, for its part, will amplify this strategy, providing the resources, the guidance, and the diplomatic shield to ensure that Yemen remains a thorn in the side of those who seek its submission. This is not just about Yemen, it is about the broader axis of resistance, about a regional dynamic that pits patience against power and history against hubris. And so, the world waits. For in this part of the world, wars are not declared with speeches or resolved with simple victories. They are fought in the mountains, in the deserts, and in the corridors of power, slowly, deliberately, and with the kind of determination that has defeated greater forces before and may well do so again.
There'll be some interesting days ahead. That's all I can tell you. You know, we're down to final strokes with Iran. That's going to be an interesting time. Can't let them have a nuclear weapon. That something's going to happen very soon. Very, very soon. I'd rather see a peace deal than the other, but the other will solve the problem.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to Geopolitical Trends, where truth matters. Is the United States itching for yet another conflict in West Asia or Middle East, this time around against Iran? In this video, I will share with you my brief analysis about this matter and place it for you within the geopolitical, security, and economic context. But before I do that, the analysis you are listening to is unique to this channel. So if you are learning and enjoying these free episodes, please hit the subscribe button and share this channel with other people so they, like you, have the opportunity to hear the truth. And thank you for your support. Let's dive in. The prospect of a military confrontation between the United States and Iran has been a recurring theme in international relations, particularly during President Donald Trump's tenure. Such a scenario aligns with Israel's long-standing strategic objective of neutralizing perceived threats from Tehran. In this analysis, I examine the geopolitical, economic, and security implications of a potential US-Iran conflict and explores the possible involvements of global powers like Russia and China in support of Iran. There are three elements I'm going to focus on. One, geopolitical implications. A US-Iran war would significantly alter the geopolitical landscape of the Middle East or West Asia. The region, already fraught with complex alliances and rivalries, would face further destabilization. Israel, perceiving Iran's nuclear ambitions as an existential threat, has advocated for a decisive action against Tehran. Israel Foreign Minister Gideon Sa'ar emphasized the necessity of a credible military option to prevent Iran from developing nuclear weapons, warning that failure to act could trigger a nuclear arms race in the Middle East involving countries like Egypt, Saudi Arabia, and Turkey, among others. As a result, Israel will lose its dominance. The divergence between US and Israel approaches towards Iran could also widen. While both nations, Israel and the US, share concerns over Iran's nuclear program, their strategies may differ. If President Trump deems military action against Iran too risky or unfeasible, Israel might consider unilateral strikes to safeguard its national security interests. Historical precedents, such as Israel's 1981 strike on Iraq's Osirak reactor and the 2007 bombing of Syria's nuclear reactor at Al-Kibar, underscore Israel's willingness to act independently when it perceives an imminent threat. But the case of Iran is different, given its military strength and missile capabilities. So Israel will have to think twice about targeting Iran's nuclear facilities. 2, economic implications. The economic ramifications of a US-Iran war would extend beyond the immediate conflict zone, affecting global markets, particularly the energy sector. The Middle East, or West Asia, is a pivotal hub for oil production and exportation. A military confrontation could disrupt oil shipment through the Strait of Hormuz, a critical choke point through which approximately 20% of the world's petroleum passes. Such disruptions would likely lead to soaring oil prices, adversely impacting economies worldwide. Moreover, the global economy could experience heightened volatility. Increased defense spending by the US and its allies, coupled with potential retaliatory actions by Iran affecting global oil supply, could trigger inflationary pressures. Countries heavily reliant on Middle Eastern oil imports would face economic strain, potentially leading to a slowdown in global economic growth. 3, security implications. The security consequences of a US-Iran war are profound, to say the least. The conflict could escalate into a broader regional war, drawing in neighboring countries and non-state actors. Iran maintains alliances with various militant groups across the Middle East, including, for example, Hezbollah in Lebanon, militias in Iraq and Syria, and the Houthis in Yemen, among others. These groups would most likely launch attacks against US interests and allies, leading to widespread instability. Furthermore, a direct confrontation might accelerate Iran's nuclear ambitions. Under existential threat, Iran could expedite its nuclear weapons program as a deterrent against future attacks. These developments, in my opinion, would undermine global non-proliferation efforts and could prompt other regional powers to pursue their own nuclear capabilities, thereby increasing the risk of a nuclear conflict. What about the involvements of Russia and China, you may ask? Russia and China both hold strategic partnerships with Iran, would play a crucial role in the event of a US-Iran war. Their involvements could range from diplomatic support to economic and military assistance, depending on their national interests and, of course, the conflict's progression. Russia's possession. Russia has cultivated a robust relationship with Iran, characterized by cooperation in various sectors, including defense, energy, and infrastructure. Moscow is the largest foreign investor in Iran and has been instrumental in developing Iran's nuclear energy capabilities. The two nations have also collaborated militarily, notably in Syria, prior to the fall of the Assad regime. In the event of a US-Iran war, Russia will likely oppose US actions on the international stage, utilizing its veto power in the United Nations Security Council to block resolutions unfavorable to Iran. Moscow could also increase military support to Tehran, providing it with advanced weaponry and intelligence to bolster Iran's defense capabilities. However, Russia would need to balance its support for Iran against the risk of a direct confrontation with the United States, which could escalate into a broader conflict detrimental to Russian interests. China's possession. China's relationship with Iran is primarily driven by energy needs and economic interests. As a major importer of Iranian oil, China has invested heavily in Iran's energy sector and infrastructure projects. Beijing has also provided diplomatic backing to Tehran, opposing unilateral US sanctions and advocating for Iran's inclusion in international forums. Should the US-Iran war occur, which I hope it doesn't, China would likely seek to protect its economic investments and ensure the continued flow of oil. Beijing might offer diplomatic support to Iran and work with Russia to counter US initiatives in international bodies. However, China would probably avoid direct military involvement, preferring to maintain its strategic focus on economic developments and at the same time avoiding entanglement in distant conflicts. Here is my conclusion for you. A potential war between the United States and Iran carries significant geopolitical, economic, and security implications for West Asia and the broader international community. While such a conflict might align with Israel's strategic objectives concerning Iran, the repercussions will be widespread, affecting global energy markets, economic stability, and regional security. The involvement of major powers like Russia and China, though likely limited to indirect support, would further complicate the situation, underscoring the need for diplomatic efforts to prevent such an escalation. In navigating this complex landscape, it is crucial for all stakeholders to consider the far-reaching consequences of a military action and to prioritize diplomatic solutions that address the underlying tensions while maintaining regional and global stability. If you like this video, please hit the like button and don't forget to
source so powerful it could provide 60,000 years of clean, limitless energy, completely transforming how humanity powers the world. It sounds like science fiction, right? But this technology is real. And like we've seen with many new emerging technologies, China is leading the charge and developing something so profound, it's going to change the entire future of humanity. This new technology is thorium nuclear reactors, a breakthrough that could revolutionize energy production as we know it. Unlike traditional nuclear power, which relies on unstable uranium and plutonium, thorium is safer, more abundant, and incapable of producing nuclear weapons. And while nuclear fusion energy could still be decades away from being viable, thorium reactors are here now, ready to scale and disrupt the global energy industry. And this follows an already growing trend. When a game-changing new technology emerges, China is leading the charge, and thorium is no exception. Last year, Beijing approved construction of the world's first ever thorium molten salt reactor plant in the Gobi Desert. The reactor is scheduled to be completed and operational in 2029, generating heat at a maximum power of 60 megawatts. While the US is still stuck in the planning phase, modeling theoretical designs and debating feasibility, China is making it a reality. And this is just the beginning. In its 14 five-year plan from 2021 to 2025, China outlined an aggressive nuclear expansion strategy, 150 new reactors in the next 15 years, aiming for 200 gigawatts of nuclear power by 2035, enough to power over a dozen cities the size of Beijing. With 30 reactors already under construction and plans to add 6 to 8 more annually. In the past decade, China has nearly tripled its nuclear capacity, achieving in 10 years what took the US nearly 40 years. China has once again proven that it is the first mover when it comes to scaling next generation technologies. In today's video, we're going to break down this world-changing energy breakthrough, what it means for China's dominance in critical resource development, and how it fits into the broader trend of Beijing taking the lead on emerging technologies. Buckle up, because this is the future of energy. Thorium truly lives up to its namesake Thor, the Norse god of thunder, offering a powerful yet controlled energy source that could reshape the future of nuclear power. Unlike conventional uranium reactors, which operate under extreme pressure and carry the ever-present risk of catastrophic meltdowns, thorium reactors are inherently safe. And here's how it works. They run at low pressure, eliminating the possibility of a reactor explosion. Thorium is dissolved in molten salt and heated to 1400 degrees Celsius. Neutrons trigger a chain reaction, converting thorium into uranium-233, a potent nuclear fuel. Heat generated from fission powers turbines, producing vast amounts of clean electricity. But the advantages don't stop there. Thorium can generate 200 times more energy than the traditional uranium-232. Thorium reactors also generate significantly less nuclear waste than traditional uranium-based reactors, and even the byproducts can be recycled for further energy use. And perhaps most critically, thorium cannot be weaponized. This is nuclear energy that cannot be turned into nuclear warheads. Therefore, it is the most secure and scalable nuclear power source ever developed. Once the first thorium reactor is completed in 2029, China has huge plans for the technology. Starting from 2030, China will begin constructing commercial modular thorium-based reactors with an electrical generation capacity of 100 megawatts or more. These smaller reactors will be able to be completely integrated into smart grids with other renewable energy sources. Chinese shipbuilders have also recently unveiled the world's first design for a giant container ship powered by this molten salt reactor. Some transport experts believe it could start a new revolution in human logistics. Now, the recent buzz around thorium has come after a recent Chinese survey found massive thorium deposits at the Bayan Obu mining complex. If fully exploited, this mine alone could yield 1 million tons of thorium, enough to fuel China for 60,000 years. Just 5 years of mining, what was previously considered waste from a single iron ore site in Inner Mongolia contains enough thorium to meet U.S. household energy demands for more than 1,000 years. The geologist goes on to say an impactful statement about the discovery. For over a century, nations have been engaging in wars over fossil fuels. It turns out that the endless energy sources lies right underneath our feet. With this discovery, China has secured the future of clean, sustainable energy and virtually inexhaustible energy. A total of 233 thorium-rich zones have been mapped across the country, forming a national energy shield that guarantees China's rise as the global energy superpower. As we know,
thorium isn't just the only game-changing resource beneath China's feet. Just when it seemed like China's grip on rare earth metals couldn't get any stronger, this latest discovery cements its dominance even further. Hundreds of thousands of tons of thorium have been added to China's strategic resource reserves, where it already dominated the process from mining to refining all the way through manufacturing, not only strengthening its control over global markets, but also eliminating any dependence on foreign nations for critical materials. Nowhere is this self-sufficiency more apparent than in rare earth minerals, the backbone of modern technology. China already controls 60% of global rare earth production, but even more importantly, it processes 90% of the world's supply, making it almost impossible for the West to break its stranglehold on the industry. And now with thorium on the table, Beijing is securing its next great energy breakthrough. What we are witnessing with China's latest discovery adds a tremendous amount of momentum to one of the biggest trends of the year so far, the global battle for minerals and precious metals. There is a reason why Donald Trump wants Ukraine to sign a lucrative minerals deal. There is a reason why Donald Trump has threatened to annex Greenland, a fellow NATO country. And there is a reason why China is going all in on thorium. Whoever controls the flow of precious metals and resources is going to have a tremendous amount of global influence in the future. Now, if you've been watching the gold markets in recent months, things are heating up tremendously. Gold just traded over $3,000 an ounce for the first time in history a couple days ago, and the precious metal has been soaring over the past 12 months, up over 38%, and most likely continuing to rise in the future as market insecurity drives fear into the market. Given the current geopolitical climate in the world, I think it's an amazing time to look into gold, and the chart I'm about to show you comes from today's video sponsor, Rua Gold, which trades under the ticker NZAUF. The share is down 30% this past year and 54% since July. But just recently, the company's largest individual shareholder, Oliver Lennox King, who serves as chairman and owns nearly 9% of the company, invested another 1 million Canadian at these current price levels. Rua Gold's CEO is Robert Eckford. Before becoming the CEO of Rua Gold, he co-founded Aris Mining, another gold producer, and was earning a base salary of $44,000 a month and had an equity stake worth nearly $300,000 a year. He gave up his $525,000 annual salary to earn a third of that with Rua Gold, because he is betting that his equity holdings with Rua will make him a fortune. These aren't just my words, but his. And it's not just him. He's joined by an incredible board and management team who together have raised over $2 billion in capital, built 8 mines, and sold these companies for over $11 billion. Now they are solely focused on New Zealand and ready to do it again. But here's where things get interesting and where the opportunity in the market exists. Gold is at all-time highs in the euro, British pound, Japanese yen, Chinese yuan, Australian dollar, Canadian dollar, and the US dollar is nearing its peak. But despite this, the GDXJ index, which is a fund composed of junior gold miners, is still down more than 66% from its peak in 2011. Rua Gold just raised another 5.75 million Canadian dollars, and I want to share with you 4 compelling reasons you should be conducting more research on Rua Gold. Number 1, jurisdiction. Right now, there is a gold rush underway in New Zealand. The country just passed a fast-track program to permit mining operations across the country in less than 6 months after decades of anti-mining laws. They have also introduced a critical minerals list, which includes gold and antimony. Number 2, bullish government. New Zealand's Resource Minister Shane Jones just attended the 2025 PDAC in Toronto, the biggest mining conference in the world. He presented alongside Rua Gold Management's team to a group of leading mining investors, encouraging them to, and I quote, develop New Zealand's gifts endowed upon the land from Mother Nature. Number 3, insider ownership. As you can see, shares of Rua Gold are owned by Eric Sprott, Peter Marone, Oliver Lennox King, the company's chairman and largest shareholder, and Robert Eckford, the company's CEO, who owns over 400,000 shares, all purchased in the open market. Together, this team has put 8 mines into production while working for previous employers. And number 4 is the gold quality. Rua Gold's land package has already historically produced over 1 million ounces of gold at an average of 20 grams per ton, which is 20 times the global production rate of 1 gram per ton. Rua Gold's business model is to consolidate the historical gold mines at the Reefton Gold Mine, located at New Zealand's South Island, explore them, and ultimately bring them back to production if all goes well. As of right now, the company owns 7 past producing mines, and long-term viewers of this channel know that I've been very bullish on gold for many years now, and I think it's the perfect time to conduct your own due diligence and research more about real gold for yourself. I'll include links to the investor presentation and company profile in the description below. As always, please do your own research and contact your financial advisor before making any investments. But I want to thank Rua Gold for sponsoring today's important video about China's game-changing thorium discovery, because this discovery isn't just about market dominance, it's about energy security. For years, China has heavily relied on imports to meet its energy needs, including oil from the Middle East, which remains vulnerable to U.S. naval blockades in a potential conflict. Even with its close partnership with Russia, energy dependence has been a key strategic concern for Beijing. But with thorium technology now within reach, China is well on its way to achieving true energy independence. China has just unlocked one of the most revolutionary energy breakthroughs in history, a discovery that could reshape global energy markets, eliminate dependence on fossil fuels, and cement Beijing as the world energy superpower. With an almost limitless supply of thorium buried beneath its own soil, China is now on the path to true energy independence, breaking free from its reliance on foreign oil and gas imports while securing its dominance over the future of clean energy. With massive investments in nuclear energy, rare earth minerals, and fusion research, China is proving once again that it is the first mover when it comes to building the infrastructure of the future. While the West remains stuck in theoretical debates, Beijing is taking action, scaling game-changing technologies that will define the next century. The world's energy order is changing fast. The only question that remains is who will be left behind. Everyone, as always, I want to thank you for your amazing support and thank you for making it to this point of the video. I look
So China is angry, they are really furious, and it's really understandable why. We are now in a geostrategic competition where it's really essential to control your supply chains. Most of us associate that with the production of key minerals and using them to produce stuff in factories. China, for example, dominates the EV supply chain. They have ownership rights in mines to dig out minerals like graphite. They have the processing plants to refine the minerals and turn them into batteries. China also has the companies to use these batteries to make EVs. But most of us miss out on a critical component of global trade. It's transporting the goods from point A to point B, which means securing your shipping routes for importing in raw materials and shipping out finished goods. And if you own a mine in Zimbabwe, you want to make sure everything from the mine all the way to the sea is controlled by you, or at least you have a stake in it. And that's why losing the Panama ports to the US has left China very angry. Li Ka-shing, the Hong Kong billionaire, faced tremendous pressure over his company's ownership of Panama's ports, and his company decided to cave in. They are selling an entire portfolio of global ports, plus the 2 Panama ports, for $19 billion to BlackRock. Now, commercially, the deal is a success. They probably sold it for a premium to the US buyer. But make no mistake, Beijing is very angry. They aren't happy they are losing control of the ports in the Panama Canal to the US, who is actively waging a trade war on them. For a very long time, Trump has expressed in no uncertain terms that he wants the canal under US control to kick any Chinese presence out and to secure the lane for America's trade.
And we shouldn't have given it. We should have never given it. But we didn't give it to China. We gave it to Panama. And now Panama has gone out and essentially ceded it to China. And until they ripped all the signs down about a week ago, when they saw that I was serious about this, most of the signs were written in Chinese. They were all Chinese all over the place. That wasn't the deal. We're taking the Panama Canal back.
And if you went through the Panama Canal 2 months ago and took an iPhone and videoed both ways, you know what you saw? Chinese letters from the beginning, through the middle, through the end. They just favored China. They blew it. They blew it. They blew it. Wow. And Donald Trump is saying the Panama Canal is fundamental to our security, and he's going to take care of America. Now, Greenland is much easier, right? We are a great democracy. Greenland is going to join America if the people in Greenland want to vote to join America.
Realize how important having a presence in the Panama Canal is. When you're shipping cargoes long distances, your ships need to take a break. A port allows you to load and unload cargo. You can handle maintenance and repairs, and more importantly, you get to refuel your container ship for the remainder of the voyage. The Panama Canal sits just between North and South America. It connects the Caribbean Sea to the Pacific Ocean. Using the canal saves you on average 10 to 20 days in voyage time, which is an eternity in global trade. But the company CK Hutchison sold both the Crystal Ball and the Balboa port to BlackRock, so this is a win for the US. That fits into Trump's plan of securing the entire Western Hemisphere. Now that the ports are under US control or about to be under US control if the deal goes through, there are many questions left hanging in the air. Now that Beijing is about to lose control over the two main ports, their stronghold over logistics there might be gone. The Belt and Road influence has also taken a hit. Now this sell-off comes off as a surprise to everyone. If it shocked you, it probably even shocked the Chinese leadership even more. The last thing you want to let go is your infrastructure assets. In addition to the Panama ports, BlackRock is going to acquire a total of 43 ports from the company. And this includes 7 ports in the Americas, 13 ports in Europe, 12 ports in the Middle East, Africa, 9 ports in Asia, and 2 ports in Australia. So Trump's plan to reduce Chinese influence is being turbocharged with this deal. To be sure, this is a commercial deal by 2 private companies, but there's no way that Trump or even Rubio was ignorant of what happened. Larry Fink must have asked for Trump's blessing to get the deal done. And sure enough, Trump took a victory lap in Congress, proclaiming to the world that he won.
National security, my administration will be reclaiming the Panama Canal, and we've already started doing it. Just today, a large American company announced they are buying both ports around the Panama Canal and lots of other things having to do with the Panama Canal and a couple of other canals.
It's no surprise that China is furious. In fact, they're hopping mad. They gave a strong rebuke to the company and warned other entities to be careful about which side they stood on. China calls the deal a spineless plan, which really shows how much anger they have towards the sale of the ports. In the period where Trump is trying to block investment into China and tariff their exports, this deal does not make Beijing happy at all. Here's the big question, will the deal go through? Could Beijing block a commercial deal? Because it's now a very messy situation. While the deal is seen as commercially viable, Beijing doesn't see it this way. Just like the US, everything is now about national security, and this will be the ultimate litmus test to see how far Beijing will go. Here's the problem with giving ports up to the US. Trump is already targeting Chinese-made container ships that arrive in US ports. And if you buy a ship from China and use it to ship products to the United States, you might just get punished with a big levy. A ship docking at a US port could be charged a service fee of up to $1.5 million. For operators with 50% or more of their fleet being Chinese-built vessels, they might be charged $1 million per ship. Sure, if you divide the tax up by the cargo being shipped, it probably works out to less than $1 surcharge. Customers can easily absorb it, but it will still hurt revenues and the bottom lines of Chinese companies. Worst of all, it actually reduces the incentives for global companies to buy Chinese ships, which is exactly what the Trump administration is trying to target. He's basically playing Monopoly on the high seas, and he has gotten 43 new ports, 43 new cards. Now, Trump's end goal has always been twofold: to secure the Western Hemisphere under US control and reshore heavy industries back to the US. And besides auto production and semiconductors, the shipping industry is also a very important sector to him. And Trump has made it crystal clear he will do whatever it takes to challenge China in heavy industries, and that includes shipbuilding as well.
To boost our defense industrial base, we are also going to resurrect the American shipbuilding industry, including commercial shipbuilding and military shipbuilding. And for that purpose, I am announcing tonight that we will create a new Office of Shipbuilding in the White House and offer special tax incentives to bring this industry home to America where it belongs. We used to make so many ships. We don't make them anymore very much, but we're going to make them very fast, very soon.
The US will use any tool available to handicap China and come out ahead. Now, Trump's tariffs are means to an end, and to bring back industry is to grab market share from Beijing. In shipbuilding, once again, China is dominating. In gross tonnage, they hold over 53% of the global market share. The US doesn't make ships anymore, at least not in significant quantities, and the biggest shipbuilder in the world is the Chinese. The more tonnage China gets, the more dependent the world will be on Chinese vessels. After all, they are being produced at a better quality, at a better price, and often very much faster.
We can't let history repeat itself, but in some cases, unfortunately, we are. Take ships. In 1975, we were the world's #1 shipbuilder. Now, we don't even produce 1% of the world's large ocean-going vessels. For every 359 large container ships China builds, we are building 1. That is not a typo. We are building 1 container ship for every 359 the Chinese are building each year.
That's why the BlackRock deal is such a big deal. If the US manages to gain more ports around the world, they can begin squeezing global ship owners to dissuade them from buying Chinese vessels. If you dock your Chinese-made vessel at our port, we will punish you. But if you buy one of our ships, you can escape the service charge. It's like a tariff on the high seas. It's really crazy. And here are the percentage of Chinese-built container ships in the world's largest carriers. On the left, we have the existing fleet. Except for COSCO, which is a Chinese company, the majority of existing ships aren't Chinese. But look at the order book on the right. Big companies like CMA, Hapag-Lloyd, and Maersk are buying the majority of their new ships from China. If you're the US, you see this as a threat. So the standard MO will be to punish these companies. And how do you do that? You impose a sort of tax they directly pay to you when they land on your ports. It's basically the game of Monopoly. Instead of homes and hotels, you acquire ports and you hope Chinese ships land on them. It's sad, it's ridiculous, and it's hilarious all at the same time. So the plan really goes beyond just the Panama Canal. When China says the US is out to contain them, they really mean it. From cheap sanctions to tariffs to now taking over global ports, this Game of Thrones is getting nastier by the week. So what will China do? Will they block the deal and force Hutchinson to keep the ports? Because they're obviously very unhappy with the deal. Or maybe Beijing will buy over the ports from Hutchinson and set up their own state-owned company. Who knows? And here's what the Chinese mouthpiece in Hong Kong said. The canal is the core route for China's trade with Latin America and the Caribbean. The United States will definitely use it for political purposes and promote its own political agenda. China's shipping and trade there will inevitably be subject to the United States. So we have to watch this more closely. It isn't just restricted to trade tariffs, the bond market, or US-China stocks. The economic war is really expensive. Supply chains are where the real battle is taking place. But let me know what you think. Will China block it? Or will BlackRock walk home with the deal? Let me know in the comments below.
Go figure. Follow me.